Thank you. The hearing will please come to order. Good morning. I'm John Galt, the Lake Forest Park hearing examiner. It is now approximately 9:03 a.m. on February 24, 2026, and I want to welcome you to today's open record hearing. We have one project on the docket for today, but it consists of 4 land use applications and 1 appeal. So there are 5 elements to the case that we are hearing today. All of these parts relate to the Lyon Creek Waterfront Preserve and a proposed expansion of that park over 2 abutting lots to the east. At this point, I should probably make clear to you the directional convention that I have always used in doing shoreline projects and other project hearings along Beach Drive. And that is, I consider Beach Drive to be north, the lake to be south, and then the lots are strung out to the east and the west. I know that's different than what some of the consultants did in writing their reports. I think we'll all be able to get along regardless of which way we do it, but I just want to let you know that that's what I've done consistently in the preserve decision was 22 years ago. And I was doing it before then, and I'm still doing it. So I am not going to change. Beach Drive is north, the lake is south, the lots are east and west. That, if nothing else, simplifies things because I don't have any northwests and southeasts and what have you to deal with in my scheme. The 5 components that are in our application and our appeal today are file number 2025-SSD-0001. That is a shoreline substantial development permit for the project. File number 2025-SCUP-0001. That is a shoreline conditional use permit for certain elements of the project. File number 2025-SVAR-0001 is a shoreline variance for certain aspects of the proposal. File number 2025-ZCUP-0001 is a zoning conditional use permit for the entire project, including revisions to the preserve. And finally, we know it as file number 2025-ADAP-0001. That is the SEPA appeal related to the project. When it was going through the process of becoming a SEPA determination, the city used file number 2025-SEPA-0001. But once it became appealed, the city assigned an appeal number to it. And so that's the number that I know it by and the number that I will use. The applicant for these projects is the City of Lake Forest, which is represented today by Attorney Kim Adams Pratt. The SEPA appellants are Jesse and Tyler Fudge, who are represented today by Attorney Cale Anaker. The parties expressed the opinion back when we had a pre-hearing conference on appeal procedures that they expected this hearing to last well more than one day. That being the case, let me just give you a sort of a brief heads up of how I typically handle an average day in a multi-day hearing. We'll be starting each day, if we need more than one day, we'll start each day at 9 o'clock in the morning. There is a possible change to that on one of the days, depending on how many days we have to go. And that changes because of a prior commitment that I had that we have to work around. The day will start at 9. We will take a mid-morning break at about 10:30, usually about a 10-minute break. We will take an hour for lunch at about 12:30. We'll take a mid-afternoon break for about 10 minutes at about 3:15. And we will recess for the day at about 5 o'clock. Now, you notice there's a lot of abouts in the times that I expressed there. And that's because if somebody's testifying and they're in the middle of it, I really don't like to religiously say, oh, it's time for the break, we got to stop. I prefer to see if we can finish with that person's testimony, then take our break. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If it looks like the person's testimony is going to go on way longer than a few minutes, then we'll go ahead and break into it and take our break. And as far as the evening stopping time, I think every night that we're doing this, I do not have a commitment. And so I could stay later if we needed to. As a general rule, however, after everybody sat here for 8 hours, that's usually long enough. If it looks like, again, if we're dealing with a witness and it looks like we can finish them, if we just tough it out for another 20 minutes or so, we'll do it. If it looks like on a particular night we could wrap the whole thing up in a half an hour to an hour, I would probably suggest that let's just stay with it, see if we can get it done tonight. So that's the general scope of where I see us going time-wise and schedule-wise during the week. Our sequence of testimony and presentations is a little bit different in a consolidated appeal and project hearing like this. And in addition to that difference, there's one slight additional difference that I'm going to put into the system, which I have advised the principal parties of ahead of time. The basic outline of the proceedings is that we will take direct testimony. That'll be followed by an opportunity for rebuttal testimony and then closing statements. Now, the direct testimony and the rebuttal testimony are heard in the same sequence, and that is that our applicant will speak first to explain what the project is for which they're seeking these permits. That sort of lays a groundwork so we all understand what we're talking about. The appellant will then testify, and the appellant and its witnesses will discuss their appeal and present their evidence regarding the appeal. Then the applicant will be heard again, and that is where the applicant can respond to the appeal and present additional testimony and specifics regarding the project. Same for rebuttal, except that the applicant doesn't get 2 bites of the apple in rebuttal. We do applicant, respondent, applicant, appellant, respondent, and then members of the general public. When we get to closing statements, and you'll notice I'm looking over my shoulder, I do not want to misstate the sequence here. It will be applicant, respondent, appellant. Now, I'm aware that 2 different parties have burdens of proof in this case. The applicant has the burden of proof of proving that the application meets the requirements for approval. In this case, there were 4 applications. That burden's on the applicant. The appellants have the burden in the SEPA case of proving that the SEPA determination issued by the city is erroneous, inadequate, whatever word you want to use. I normally set up the testimony so that the party with the burden goes first and last. In this case, where I've got 2 burdens, it doesn't work quite that way, so I have chosen the sequence that I just explained. Now, the one additional difference is that because I expect much of the testimony to be expert witnesses who are being examined and cross-examined by legal counsel, the direct testimony for the appellant and the applicant could go on for a couple of days before we would get to the general public. And I have found historically that that's a real problem for members of the public. You don't want to come into the hearing and sit here for 4 days wondering when you're going to get a chance to testify, and you finally do, but that day you had some commitment and you couldn't stay. So what I do frequently in a case where we're expecting long examination and cross-examination of principal parties is to break into that sequence and allow members of the public to testify out of order, if you will. In this case, I will be doing it after the applicant has presented its initial explanation of the project. I will then ask if there are any members of the public who wish to offer testimony regarding the project and or the SEPA appeal. And we will take your testimony at that time if you wish to give it. If you want to wait and take your turn in the normal course of events, I'm not going to stop you. But if you want to testify earlier so you can go on about your life, that's the opportunity that we're going to give. I must make this clear before we get too far into this. If you take up that opportunity to testify out of sequence earlier in the hearing, when we get to public testimony later, I will call for it because there may be people who will choose not to go early. Once you've testified, you will not get a chance to testify again until we get to rebuttal. So just keep that in mind. You don't get 2 bites by testifying early and then saying when it's regular time, oh, I want to testify again. No, not going to work that way. Okay. One other mechanical thing relating to, in a way, what we've just been talking about, and that is the oath. All testimony is given under oath. Our 2 legal counsel who are here do not get sworn in because they don't testify. They ask questions, they make legal argument, but they do not testify. Occasionally, I have an attorney who says, I actually want to testify. And if that's the case, I will swear them in. If I do that, you'll notice that I use slightly different words than I do for everybody who's not an attorney, but I doubt that that's going to occur in this case. So they don't get sworn in. When they are first recognized, the only thing I ask is that they tell us their name and how to spell it. For the rest of you folks who will be testifying, when I recognize you, please raise your right hand. I will administer the oath. You will respond as your conscience dictates. And as I sometimes facetiously say, assuming your conscience leads you in the right path to the right answer, I will then ask you to give us your name and spell it, first name and last name. For those of you who are participating remotely, you're aware that your screen has all of our names already spelled on it. So why am I asking you to spell it? It's because, number one, sometimes people don't use their name. They have strange little shorthands that they use to identify themselves on these Zoom sessions. And more importantly, it is possible to review the record of the hearing just listening to the audio. And I think lots of times probably judicial officers do that rather than watching the thing. They will listen to it. Or the attorneys will suggest a certain area they should listen to, and they'll go to that and listen to the testimony in that part. And if they're listening, they don't see your picture and they don't see the name. So I ask that you tell us your name, how to spell it, first and last. As soon as you've done that, I will almost 100% of the time say something like, thank you very much, please proceed, or please go ahead, or you may begin, something like that. I don't have stock wording, it's just whatever seems right. If I don't, if I happen to forget and a few seconds of dead space go by, feel perfectly free to just begin your testimony. Don't wait for me to suddenly realize that I've forgotten to invite you to speak. Just go ahead and start. Okay. We will, when we're taking testimony, we will get to folks who are with us on the screen, as well as folks who are with us at City Hall. You'll all get a chance to testify if you wish to. The 4 applications that are before me are classified by the city as type 1 applications. The SEPA process is considered a type 3 application. When we get to the point in a SEPA process where an appeal has been filed, for all intents and purposes, it's processed like a type 1. Type 1s require an open record pre-decision hearing by the hearing examiner, which is what we are doing here today. I then have a period of up to 10 days after the close of the hearing in which to consider all of the testimony and the evidence that's been offered and to reach and issue a decision. My decision's in writing, and once I finished it, I send it electronically to the city, and the city then disseminates it to parties of record. Party of record is anybody who testifies during the hearing and anybody who attends the hearing, even if they choose not to testify. When we do hearings fully in person, the clerk has a sheet of paper at his or her workstation, and folks can come up and enter their name and contact information on that paper to become a party of record. Where we're doing a hearing remote or hybrid, as the case is this morning, we obviously can't all go to the clerk and sign in on a piece of paper because many of us are not physically there. What I suggest you do is, I would normally say at the end of the hearing, but there's a couple of things you can do. You can send a chat if you know how to do chats in Zoom, and if you're doing this Zoom way, you can send the chat, and the hearing clerk, who happens to be the city clerk, and for those of you in the City Hall, he's sitting up there in the upper, be your upper right corner of the room. He will then be able to read the chat, and he can get your contact information from that. If you're there physically, go see him before you leave to give him your contact information. If you have already sent something into the city that was sent by email, they already have your email address and you don't need to worry about it. And if you want to wait to the end of today's hearing, I will leave the hearing after we recess for the day. Mr. McLean can keep the hearing going, and those of you who want to give information to him about being a party of record can do it at that time also. There are several ways you can do this. Anything works as long as you get it to him. I will say that Lake Forest Park staff, like most city staffs, these days vastly prefer to disseminate decisions electronically. It's easier, it's quicker. I'm sure it probably costs the city less to do it that way as well. And if you're willing to accept email service of the decision when it comes out, please give the city your email address instead of your post office address. I am required to base my decision primarily on the review criteria for each type of permit that I'm hearing. In this case, the review criteria for conditional use permits are found in 18.54.030 and .048. The review criteria for substantial development permits are in the master program at sections 3.3 and 7.10. The review criteria for shoreline conditional use permits are in the master program at section 3.8.b as in Bravo. The review criteria for shoreline variances are in the shoreline program at 3.8.a as in Alpha. In addition to those specific criteria, I do consider any other relevant provisions and requirements of the city code, of officially adopted city plans and policies to the limited extent that they can be considered in a hearing such as this, state law and rule, and judicial precedent, all applied to the facts that are disclosed by the documents and the testimony entered into the record of this hearing. I reserve the right to take official notice of applicable case law, provisions of state laws and rules, provisions of the city code, the comprehensive plan, and other adopted city policies. I occasionally will take official notice of things, for example, that I've seen in Google Earth. I will tell you in a minute that I viewed the property via Google Earth. There is a handy little tool in Google Earth that lets you measure the distance between point A and point B. And I have sometimes used that when it seemed relevant but not highly important that the distance between two things be stated in the record, and yet nobody happened to testify about it. So there are times when I will go to an official source like that or a public source like that for background information, if you will. Are there any questions about hearing procedures? Are there any objections on jurisdictional grounds or concerns regarding conflict of interest? Hearing none, we will roll right along. I just mentioned site visit. The city code says that I may make a site visit prior to conducting a hearing like this. In this case, way back 20 years ago, I did a physical site visit before holding the hearing on the preserve. I somewhat remember it. I don't say this to brag, but I am a terrible person at remembering people's names. I'll forget your name 2 minutes after you've told it to me if I don't do something to make it click. But physical places that I've been to and seen, I seem to be able to remember them pretty well forever. So take that for what it's worth, but I have a pretty decent memory of what the site looked like back then. In addition, I used Google Earth, and I looked at both overhead imagery and street view imagery that was available. The overhead imagery was captured on July the 6th of 2024. The street view imagery was captured in April of 2025. Street view imagery dates never give you a day, they just give you a month and a year. The overhead imagery being a satellite image, they can give you a precise date that they captured the image on. So that's what I've done to see the property. Now, in appeal cases, we go through a pre-filing of evidence process. It's spelled out in the rules of procedure, and the idea is that the parties put out for the parties to see and for the public to see the material that they're going to rely on. The intent being that there's no surprise. We don't do decisions by surprise. It may make great television to have Matlock surprise everybody with unknown evidence while the hearing's going on, but in our case, I don't like to do it that way. So we do pre-filing. In addition to the parties pre-filing, there are times when neither party pre-files some documents that I feel should be in the record. And in that case, I enter what I call the admin documents, and I assign them exhibit numbers in the 9,000 range. And I have 3 of them to enter today. I have sent an email to the parties this past Sunday telling them what these 3 are. And all 3 of them are documents that they are well aware of because they received the originals of these things way back when. Exhibit 9001 is a letter from me to the principal parties dated November 12th of 2025 regarding SEPA appeal scheduling and a stay in the appeal. Exhibit 9002 are emails among the principal parties and myself between November 12th and 16th of 2025 regarding scheduling of a pre-hearing conference, and it includes a Zoom invitation that I sent to the principal parties on for a pre-hearing conference on December the 10th, and a second Zoom invitation for a pre-hearing conference on December the 17th. For the benefit of those who were unaware of a pre-hearing conference, the reason there were 2 of them was we got to a point in the first one where the parties needed to go back and talk to their witnesses and look for availabilities and what have you. So we just stopped where we were and said, let's get together again. And that's the second one, which was December 17th. Exhibit 9003 is an email that I sent to the principal parties on December 17th of 2025, summarizing the pre-hearing conference. Instead of doing a formal fancy order, I did an email. I herewith enter into the record exhibits 9001 through 9003. The city pre-filed its exhibits using the 0 to 999 range for exhibit numbers. And they pre-filed 40 exhibits. And they provided us with, us being the principal parties, with a listing of these 40 exhibits. The exhibits have all been available on the city's website for public review in the days and weeks leading up to our hearing. I herewith enter pre-filed exhibits 1 through 40 into the record. I looked at the witness lists that both parties submitted. I frankly was doing that yesterday. And it occurred to me that in both cases, the parties had included the resumes of their expert witnesses. And sometimes we end up taking time in the hearing saying, well, so-and-so's resume is here and blah, 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 let's enter it. And it just occurred to me yesterday, I'm going to make this simple. I'm going to enter the witness lists as exhibits. Then the resumes are in there. We don't have to worry about it. So I herewith enter as exhibit 41, the city's witness list. Our appellants pre-filed exhibits using the 1000 series numbers, And they had three exhibits that were pre-filed, and they're marked as 1001 through 1003. They too prepared a listing of their exhibits and submitted it to folks. Their exhibits, I believe, have also been available on the city's website for review. I herewith enter into the record pre-filed exhibits 1001 through 1003. And again, I'm going to add the appellant's witness list, and that is 1004. That includes the resumes of their experts. Okay. You will all be happy to know that's the end of the preliminary remarks. I get to listen for a while. Ms. Adams, are you going to ringmaster your witnesses, or do you have somebody who's going to start? How do you want to procedurally?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but before we get going, I have a couple of preliminary matters. This is Cale Anaker, by the way.
Thank you, Mr. Anaker.
Yes.
Why don't you let's set a good record. Spell your name for the record, please.
Of course, Caelen, that's Calen, and Anaker, Anacker.
And for the record, you told me before we started that you sometimes go simply by Cale, Cael.
Yes, I won't be offended if someone calls me that.
Okay, thank you. And what are the procedural matters you want to get us into here?
First of all, I've spoken with Miss Adams Pratt, and we've agreed to a stipulated motion to allow cross-examination of witnesses under Rule of Procedure 312B. It sounds like you were already contemplating that, but I wanted to make it official. This would just be to remove the necessity of having to call back witnesses and make the hearing less burdensome on everyone, frankly.
And you want to tell me what this stipulation says?
Well,
I've never seen, if there's a written version of it, I've never seen it. So I don't know.
We spoke, Miss Pratt can jump in if I'm telling a lie here, but we spoke by email. I was intending to just make this a verbal motion. I'm happy to put together something more formal for you.
Well, I'm happy to go verbal as long as I understand what I'm approving. You've just said a stipulated motion regarding cross-examination.
Yeah, of course. It would just be agreed that the parties can cross-examine the witnesses of the other principal parties in this hearing. Does that sound about right to you, Ms. Pratt?
Yes, Mr. Examiner, I think one of the rules of procedure talks about may be able to cross-examine, and so Mr. Anaker just wanted to make sure we were both going to be able to cross-examine each other's witnesses, and I'm on board with that request.
And I certainly have no objection either. May I suggest an extension, perhaps, of that motion regarding cross-examination? When I looked at the appellant's witness list, it's got several people on it that the city may also be calling. And it occurred to me that it might be more efficient. Whoever calls the witness first, the other party can cross-examine. Okay, that's fine. But I think counsel would agree, typically in crossing, I know it's a little flexible with a quasi-judicial proceeding like I run, but still, I keep it kind of controlled. You only cross-examine on what the witness testified to. But it occurred to me that if, let's say for the sake of argument, Ms. Pratt calls a witness, that person testifies about certain things, topics A, B, C, and then it's time for Mr. Anaker to cross-examine. Now, Mr. Anaker intends to call the same person as a witness on his client's behalf. And he wants to ask them not only about A, B, and C, but D, E, and F. I'm thinking he should be able to go ahead and ask them that so that we get the witness once on the stand and cross-examined once by both parties so that we get the whole thing with one person one time and we don't have to hear them once and then turn around a few hours or days later and hear them all over again. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does to the city.
Yes, that makes sense to.
Okay.
Well,
Your
so moved.
your motion is accepted.
Thank you. And then the other thing is more of just the information for the examiner. I don't think it's going to come into play, or I don't think it's going to be an issue, but one of my experts is not available today, it turns out, or on Friday. I suspect that testimony will be going at least into tomorrow, and I can call her then. But I wanted to give that heads up to the hearing examiner.
Okay, thank you. If it were to amazingly happen that we were ready to finish tonight at 5 o'clock, I would continue the hearing till tomorrow so that your expert witness could be heard.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. And maybe we can hope that we don't have to worry about Friday. We'll see. Okay. Any other procedural from either of you? No?
Not from me, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Anaker. Ms. Pratt, who do you want to have start for the city?
Ms. McClusick and Mr. Booth are going to do the presentations on the permits.
Okay. And which of you two plans to take the lead? Just raise your hand, whoever wants to go first. Ms. McClusick. Okay, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be offering in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Would you tell us your name and how to spell it, please, first and last?
Sure. My name is Amber McClusick. That's spelled Amber Miklusick.
Yes. Lusc. Okay. Thank you. You may go ahead.
Okay, great. I have a presentation to share here. Let me
Okay.
get that set up.
I presume this is like a PowerPoint.
It is a PowerPoint, yes.
Okay, we will enter the McClusick presentation as City Exhibit 42.
Okay, great. How would you prefer to receive that? As a PDF or as a PowerPoint at the end of today?
Either.
Okay.
Why don't you let the staff know which way they'd prefer to handle it?
Okay, that sounds great.
Because you would send it to them, and they will forward it to me.
Perfect.
And
Okay.
I prefer not to have parties communicating directly with me. It gets confusing
That works
and
for me.
problematic.
I'll coordinate with Kim. Go ahead.
Oh, and Mr. Hearing Examiner, I presume the fudges will also be getting a copy of that from you.
Wouldn't be from me, from the city. Can we
the
agree
city.
to do that?
Yes.
Yes, the city will make
Thank
sure
you.
you get a copy. Yep. Okay, Ms. McClusick, are you sharing screen?
Just about, let's see, share. Okay. My apologies. I am a normal Teams user. So just one moment here. Okay. Okay. Can you see that?
I do.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm struggling a little bit to find my speaker notes here. Okay. Oh my. All right. Let's go ahead and get this started. Okay, so I'm going to go through just an introduction of the project, the Lakefront Improvements Project in Lake Forest Park. My role is as the primary project manager and landscape architect, facilitator for phase one, which was the design, and then again, project manager and landscape architect of record for the design development up to the permit submittal applications, which brings us to where we are today. So quick overview of where the park is located. I know we're all familiar with this, but for anyone else joining, the park is located on 3 parcels as stated by Hearing Examiner Galt. At the beginning of this, they're located at near the north end of Lake Washington within the city limit of Lake Forest Park. So the project responds to these 3 parcels and really the project initiation. So how did this project come to be? So if we look at the park system within the city of Lake Forest Park, the city has a handful of park assets, a total of 10 prior to the acquisition of this parcel, only one of which is located on the shoreline. So that is, if you can see where my cursor is, can you see where my cursor is?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So this is what's listed as Lyon Creek Waterfront Preserve. So this is an existing public access property. However, it does not actually have water access. So you can see on the shoreline of Lake Forest Park, the only public land that exists is this Lake Forest, the Lyon Creek Waterfront Preserve. So there's actually no public water access or recreation within the city limit because the limitation of the preserve parcel, which we'll talk about a little bit later, prohibits water access. So unless you're a member of one of the 2 private clubs that are located within the city, which is the Civic Club and the Sheraton Beach Club, both of those are restricted by title. One is a homeowners association. The other one does have a deed restriction. So you need to first purchase a property within the deeded area of that club and then become a member. So the barrier to entry is substantial for many residents. So roughly 85% of residents have to actually leave the city to legally gain access to the Lake Washington. So there is Log Boom Park, which is in Kenmore, and then Matthews Beach Park, which is in the city of Seattle. So in the city's long-range planning, through their PROST, the Park Recreation Open Space and Trails process, as well as other community engagement processes, they identified lake access as a main goal for the city. So this was something that citizens of the city requested and was determined to be a recreational need. This is a snapshot from just one open house of a full engagement process that the city administered around 2017 to support its park recreation and open space and trails plan. And you can see some of these top things are elements that are provided with this proposed project. One is lake access. There was a community center that was identified. Picnic shelter was another. So additional needs that the city identified was a playground. The park is deficient in its level of service for playground and other types of recreational activities. So the purpose of acquiring this property, the Turner property adjacent to the preserve, we'll go into a little bit more about that, was to provide specifically for public water access and to provide recreation opportunities on and near Lake Washington. So in terms of supporting the acquisition, but then also the subsequent design and construction, to date, the city has received state, federal, and county funds for the acquisition, design, and construction of the project. This is a little snapshot of the acquisition parcel. So where we are speaking about, the directional north here, so we've got State Road 522, Ballinger Way comes in roughly here at the entrance to the Civic Club. You can see the Lakefront Town Center, Lake Forest Park Town Center. So the Lake Forest Park Civic Club, this is that private club, is located directly adjacent to the existing preserve. So the preserve is a city-owned property. The city purchased it previously. And then once the city acquired this lakefront property, the decision became to incorporate the 2 of these into a new public park. This is located on This is located on a number of transit networks, so you can see that it's in an urbanized area of town. The town center is here, as well as the Burke-Gilman Trail runs along the project boundary. There is also King County bus service that runs along the roadway as well. And then there are paddling stops at both Log Boom Park and at Sheridan Beach Park. So the water trail currently does not extend to the preserve, but could be accommodated and is proposed to be accommodated at the new park. Currently, as mentioned, there's no water access on the preserve property. So one thing I wanted to just call as a reference point up here is this is the Wortleman Mansion. This was built prior to the lake lowering and plays into some of the beginning history of the property, which we'll go into now. Okay, so the property has been developed since about the 1950s. This picture on the top is from the 1950s. The property was developed after the lake was lowered. So in 1912, when the lake was lowered and the locks were constructed, this property was emerged from the bottom of Lake Washington, and development followed shortly after. So most of the structures were built in the 1920s and 30s. Several were expanded around the 60s and 70s. And essentially, the property was operated as a vacation cabin, so a place of recreation for decades. You can see the big house back here. That's the Wortleman Mansion as well. So you can note that in the back. And the dock, we believe, is potentially the same facility. It's been pretty rough shape nowadays. It's been there for quite a while. And you can see in this photo, there's the big house. The main house is still the structure that remains. These small cabins, the series of them sort of stagger back, and those are the ones that are still on the property. Okay. Let's see. I am having a little bit of an issue with my screens. There is a delay between the two of them. My apologies for that. Okay, so the former Morris property represents a third of the project, and this is Lyon Creek Waterfront Preserve. So this was bought by the city in about 1998. It went through a permitting and development process, which I know many people in this room have experience with. It includes the downstream end of Lyon Creek Park, which is salmon-bearing stream. And through its permitting process in 2002, the hearing examiner's decision did put a number of development restrictions on the property. So those included things like water access being prohibited. There is a dock that's present there, but the dock is for viewing only. It's only an overlook. There's no water access for swimming or boating on that dock. It is a biking and walking park, so there's one ADA space that's provided on site. Otherwise, all of the parking is located off site. It had a number of restrictions on use. For example, special events are capped at 70 people within the preserve, and then it sets additional requirements. The hearing examiner's conditions at that time set additional requirements for things like signage, screening, and fencing. So after the property went through the 2002 hearing examiner, it was converted to a preserve shortly after that. And then there was some subsequent restoration work that was done on the property in 2017 as part of a floodplain restoration project. So this is what's known as the former Turner property. It's actually two tax parcels that have been effectively programmed as a single lot. It was acquired by the city in 2019-2020 for the specific purpose of expanding lakefront water access, but then lakefront recreational activities as well. It was previously operated as a single-family residence, but it also had these additional recreational guest cabins. So since about the 1920s and 30s, with the expansion of these structures, this has been a disturbed property. So those 9 buildings across the 2 properties. It also has the dock, which is derelict and condemned now. And then there's extensive lawn, non-native vegetation, invasive vegetation. And you can see from the photo where there are, and if you look back through the aerials, you can see that there's numerous kind of boat trailers and things. So we know that there was, vehicular circulation. You can see boats and cars and things like this. So well used and very disturbed in terms of the uses of the property. Okay, so here is just a little bit showing the evolution of a timeline of how the site was developed. So this is 2002. This is the 2002 aerial. You can see the extent of the Morris house while it was still on the property. This does include a small portion that's actually built over the creek, and that it was actually reused. It was preserved as the overlook platform that remains there today. You can see the access and drives associated with what was the Morris house. I don't have a floor plan of the Morris house, but we can presume that, based on the size and based on that it was a single family residence, that it would have had the typical things like bathroom, kitchen, etc. So this is, again, 2002, these three properties showing the kind of before city acquisition condition. This would have been the time that the property was acquired, went to the hearing examiner, and where those conditions were applied. So shortly after this year is when shortly within this year, shortly after this photo, we can presume is when it started its transition to the preserve and where initially the parking dedication over at City Hall first occurred. So we can go forward to 2007. So you can see here that the Morris home has been removed. That deck has been preserved as the creek, over the creek. You can see that the restoration of this property has started in the area most closest to Lyon Creek, and the offsite parking. Obviously the sign doesn't show here, but this is when that pattern of back and forth was first established, was post those 2002 conditions. So that would have already been a behavior that's present at this time. This is a really good photo where you can actually see the extent of the armoring on the property. That's the Turner properties. So this was when they were still in private hands, still operated with the number of structures, the dock, the boating, etc., and activity at the shoreline. So if we go to the 2017, so skipping forward 10 years from the last photo, what you'll notice about this photo is that this shows the additional changes to the preserve that occurred as part of the Lyon Creek culvert replacement. So Lyon Creek, the city worked to replace, I believe it was, might have been 6 culverts, but it was multiple culverts upstream of and leading into the park, and restored in the area of the park where they actually took out a lot of vegetation for the sake of restoring the floodplain, so allowing the creek to expand into this floodplain bench. And so you'll notice from the prior photo where there was some scrubby vegetation that would have had only a couple years of growth because it was a house not long before that. But that vegetation was further reduced and replanted to be an active floodplain. So next we have the 2023 photo. And so this was really when this current project, the Lakefront project, started. So this would have been the Lyon Creek Preserve has been open for about 20 years. The parking is still dedicated. The project, you can see, has grown in, but it has been changed slightly by the activation of that floodplain. All of the all of the structures are still present on the Turner properties, and this has now turned over into city hands, and the city is ready to start the project. So from the beginning, community engagement was a major component of this project. The city had really determined that the community needed to be a substantial part of guiding the direction of the project, and that the program and the design should be informed by community needs and discussion. The acquisition of the property itself came out of the stated needs to expand water access and to provide recreational opportunities on the shoreline. So since the project started, which was when my firm was retained in July 2023, we started with a robust program for engagement. So since the project started up to when the permit applications were submitted and to today, we immediately, when the project started, launched a project website. So a couple of years on that at this point. I just checked the analytics in this past few days. So in that amount of time, we've had 17,000 page views by 8,400 unique visitors. So that's measured by IP address. So if it's one person on a phone and a computer, they come up as 2, but nonetheless, we do have good evidence that there's been web traffic engagement. We've had 200 people who have opted into project updates via a listserv. So this is where they can actively engage and supply their information through the website to sign up for project updates. At the beginning of the engagement effort to inform people that this project was happening and that there were opportunities to participate in the creation of this park, we did 2 direct mailing campaigns. So that was a postcard twice sent out to every single address in the Lake Forest Park area. So that was a total of about 9,500 postcards that went out in those 2 mailings. The city did extensive community event tabling. So this was really, instead of saying, hey, we're here to talk about this, show up where we are, we went to them, the Battle of the Bands, the Farmers Market, numerous other events to say, this is happening. If you haven't known about it, please come and participate. There was also regular promotions through the city's local channels of promotion. So there's an e-news and there's a newsletter. There's social media. Those went out, we estimate, monthly throughout that beginning stages of the project. We had 4 in-person community workshops. We logged more than 300 in-person attendees as a total for all events. These were people who signed in. We do estimate that people came and didn't sign in as well, but what we can document is about that 300 people coming. As part of the engagement, we did multiple surveys for this project, and we had more than 800 responses to those over the sake of all the surveys together. In addition, we've participated in numerous official meetings, so presentations to both the Park and Recreation Advisory Board and the City Council. And then we've done, as needed, small group meetings with stakeholders and funders. So people who may have a particular interest in the park, a small group meeting with the city staff to hear concerns and discuss specific aspects of the project. So here are some highlights from that work. So here's just some documentation of the community meetings. So this was a series of interactive exercises, making sure that the exhibits were custom designed to get at the feedback from individuals. So here's one where we've got a site plan where we have community members who are actually programming where they might think parking could work on the site or specific activities that they'd like to enjoy. Where, how they felt about access and getting to the park. So where they're feeling safe with green dots, where they think that things need to be addressed. There was a lot of great discussion, community members really talking back and forth about key concerns, asking questions, really engaged community in terms of participating in this process. And then just here's some more highlights of that engagement, booths, where the city and where the engagement met the community out on their own terms. And then we still have additional engagement planned. This project is not over. We do intend to maintain the project website through the eventual park opening. We'll continue tabling at events. So a lot of those happen in the summer season through the farmers market and those types of events. Continued updates through the website, email, newsletter. We do have 4 additional meetings right now, currently in the plan with the park board and with the city council. And then as things come up and community concerns arise, the city continues to have small group meetings with stakeholders and funders. So a really intentional process to make sure that the community is represented and that their voice is heard. So the engagement, next step after the engagement was really the site design. And so the engagement work through all of phase 1 was really intense and really robust. And the site design was meant to respond to things that we were hearing from community members. So what we heard from the engagement was really a desire for water-related recreation opportunities that are consistent with the lakefront location. So specifically things like paddling, swimming, just being near the shoreline, just seeing it, relaxing, gathering, enjoying the lake view. Other things that we heard was really accessibility. So the community wanted everyone to be able to participate in these activities. And then respect for sensitive areas and habitats, specifically Lyon Creek. Lyon Creek runs through much of the city. The city really speaks fondly of this and its other creeks, and particularly the mouth of Lyon Creek on the lake as being something that the opportunity for waterfront access and recreation at this location is wonderful. The community spoke very in favor, but they all acknowledge that Lyon Creek is a really special thing, and so it needs to be done in a context of balance. Okay, so in addition to these are precedent images, not images of the actual park, obviously. So some other activities and facilities that were mentioned included mostly passive activities, walking, nature viewing. One active facility, which is the playground, has been identified as a community need and as appropriate for the site. Came out in the community engagement, lots of people speaking on in favor of a playground. And then other site amenities that would be consistent with and supporting waterfront activities. So a kayak rack, bike rack, an air pump station for pumping up, inflatable kayaks, those types of things. So those are all incidental park-related things that respond to that waterfront location. And then facilities consistent with biking and walking. So we know that there's the existing biking and walking access pattern to the preserve, which has been longstanding, and then the proximity to the Burke-Gilman Trail. So the community asked for items like, a bike rack, those types of things, trailhead amenities, essentially. Okay, so a little bit about that location. So in terms of exploring access to the park, we know that the park property itself does have, we anticipated, and I'll share that on some of these following slides, about encumbrances related to shoreline and creek and wetland buffers. And so we understand whenever we do these exercises with site design that some things are a trade-off. For example, if we were to fill the entire park with parking, we would have to mitigate all of that, and it really leaves no opportunity for these other things. And so in terms of exploring what's the pattern of people arriving at the park, we often don't have a 20-year precedent of people walking and biking and using off-site parking for a facility, but in this case we do, which is really wonderful. So the site is well positioned on transit and walk and bike networks. There is current King County Metro route along 522 that is actually in the being improved to a bus rapid transit system by Sound Transit. So as well positioned on transit as this area and this site is, and this being the town center, it's only getting better based on some of the coming improvements that are also being planned. The preserve is already served by some offsite parking, so that's something to consider in terms of moving the design forward. And then let's see, there is a dirt shoulder trail. So the 2002 hearing examiner condition did require a walking path, some sort of walking path or trail from the Burke-Gilman to the site. That's an unimproved shoulder that's sort of protected by a curb. And so in doing this project, one of the things that we heard was that we should explore improving that and formalizing it to a sidewalk. So again, here's where we're looking at in terms of where the project started and what that condition is. So here is that unimproved trail next to the curb. So these are some just photos of the site condition. This is, the area, central area of the lawn of the property, which can kind of, this delay is really getting me. So this is that walking connection on Beach Drive. So my apologies, this would be north in our adopted directional here. The open lawn, we've got the preserve dock, the dock and waterfront on the new property, and then an aerial photo that we've taken. So you can see the age of some of these facilities is pretty apparent. We did not know at this time that it's not safe to walk on the structure, so my apologies for that. And you can see the kind of condition of some of this needing to zoom out and really think about this site as a whole. So this is a drone photo. It was taken shortly after the project started. And you can see the proximity of the Civic Club development, the mouth of Lyon Creek, that, open, restored, working on being restored buffer of the Lyon Creek Preserve. This is the dock that's water access only. And you can see, in the back, there's that Wortelman mansion that we keep seeing as kind of a keystone in most of these photos. And then the Turner property are these two lots here with the condemned dock in the center and the structures in the back. So when the city purchased the property, they used this sketch, which was the initial acquisition concept, to raise funds for the acquisition process. So you can see that this has active courts, numerous new buildings. So it's got kind of these, multiple new things, one of which is closer to the shoreline. It did propose to renovate, but keep the dock, supported on its armoring, and then add this sort of second finger dock as a paddle access. It was proposed to have, on-site parking with a turnaround facility. And this is actually, kind of intruding into the site. And the intent here was that all of the development and impact at the preserve would be largely maintained, and that really the new park programming would happen on the north property. So in terms of the design effort, in starting this process again and listening to the community, what became really apparent was that we really needed to set this aside and then work with the community to develop a program that was consistent with their needs and, as much as possible, respected and reduced the impacts that were already present on the site. So here's a couple of just images of that existing condition. So starting from new, this is the Lyon Creek Preserve. So this is the entry trail. You can see here the proximity of those structures that are located on the Turner property. So very kind of narrow area between the two. This is the existing pedestrian bridge. This is currently solid overwater cover that exists within the park. This is the trail on what would be the west side of the creek. So Civic Club would be on your right-hand side, the creek is on your left-hand side, and so these trails. And you can see that when these were set up, they were set up as a narrow, compacted gravel trail. They've expanded over time. They've become heavily compacted. They're, they would be considered paved surfaces according to the impervious surface definition in the code. So there's extensive kind of wide trails through here. This trail is an interesting one, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but this is the overlook that is reused from the Morris House porch that was over the creek, has now been an open, community overlook structure. It's open on both sides, so it provides access to the, back side of the creek as well, that trail. And then it has this at-grade approach. And this is actually, it cuts through what was the floodplain restoration area. So this area of the trail is kind of always a little bit damp. And when Lyon Creek starts to swell, it swells and actually comes across here. So, and then this is another view of this trail on the backside of the creek. So there's some context of the preserve. Here's a little bit of context of the Turner property. So it's got the house. This house was built in two halves. This is the 1920s, 30s portion. This was the 60s, 70s edition. This is that little cabin that's, close to the shoreline here, the expansive lawn, and then the shoreline on the east side of the dock. Here's the dock that's located there, and then you can see the wall that separates the city-owned property from one of the residential homes adjacent. Oops. Okay, so here's a little bit more about just the shoreline, just context. And then, a couple additional photos. So here is the other portion of the dock where you can see the fence that separates the preserve property from the Turner acquisition. Just a couple of those. If we need to refer back to those, let me know. Okay, so this really shows where the preserve dock is located, and you can see that it's located in an area where there's a lot of sedimentation that comes down Lyon Creek. It's a natural process, but it does, change basically the profile of how often this dock is over water and not. And in some of the aerial photos, you'll notice that there's people recreating on the beach in the preserve property, which is not consistent with the hearing examiner's conditions and was something we were very aware of in terms of the community's desire to keep that as a protected space. And so in thinking about how we would approach the design, you're starting to look at all of these different things and what the community is asking for and begin that planning process from a new perspective. So here is the site. This shows the existing conditions in the survey that we acquired in 2023 to begin the design process and move it forward. And let's see here. Okay, so couple things that you'll note is the extent of pavement. So these are all defined per the Lake Forest Park Municipal Code, which includes things like compacted gravel. Currently, the project has or the Turner property has a driveway that kind of comes in very close to these two really remarkable landmark trees, serves multiple garages on the site, and then also provided circulation to, what was apparent from just the tracks was that, this was where boats would come down and they were using this for water access. There's a number of structures. This is a carport, which I think was either 4 or 5 bays of a carport with a paved bottom. These are all cabins. So this is a garage and cabin. This cabin also has a garage, but each of these have, a full residence basically. So rooms, kitchen, bathroom, etc. And then the main house is a 2-story structure, 2 bathrooms and a large kitchen on the base. And then here again is another cabin. So within the preserve, we have a paved parking area that is the ADA space and turnaround. And then a series of trails that provide access and kind of this, H shape across the floodplain on the far bank of the creek and then all the way out to the dock. So in thinking about, how would we approach a sensitive way of minimizing impacts and move forward with the design, we really looked at, how do we get to acknowledging things that are on the site and then moving ahead with a really responsible program for providing access while also balancing that with restoration and, of course, impact minimization. So using the survey of existing conditions, we supplemented that with our site assessments. So what's present, you can see here that the site is substantially encumbered. There's a number of wetlands, the shoreline, the creek, and you can see where these various buffers representing shoreline jurisdiction and wetland and stream buffers come to. So we attempted to try and balance these impacts by reusing and clustering the development, putting impact over prior impact, restoring as much as possible. And then when we're looking at restoration, really prioritizing the highest value habitats for restoration first and making sure that we're doing the right action that way. So a couple of the things that we discussed were things like, in lieu of providing a new lawn, preserving part of the existing, reusing the buildings where it was appropriate, and then trying to use, each of these areas, if you think about things like tree preservation, each of these areas represent an area where roots are not growing, right? And so in terms of new impact in other areas versus maintaining impact over another impact, it actually gives us a better chance of maintaining mature trees that might be located proximal to those prior developments rather than a new impact within the tree root zone. So a bunch of things and considerations that we looked at in terms of what we might do to achieve the city's program in a really environmentally sustainable way. So looking ahead to how we might minimize impacts, we're looking at how can we enhance the ecosystem as we're doing that. So in addition to preserving lawn, it's also a reduction of the turf area. We can remove, there's a hard armor at the shoreline. At least in this area, we believe it may be also buried a little bit further down, but pulling the hard armor out of the lake shoreline is an excellent ecosystem recovery action. We have an old dock, a dock that's very close to the creek mouth, and you can see collecting sediment underneath it. So consolidating those into one, locating it in an area that is off of the preserve, which was a move that we wanted to take, which puts it farther than the creek mouth. We also have, wetlands that are very close at the shoreline and touching this dock, and then the access to this dock is really through that wetland. So relocating the new dock to an area that's outside of the wetlands. It's the highest part of the shoreline. A number of things, that overwater cover, the pedestrian bridge that I mentioned earlier on that we saw the photo of. The proposal, we actually determined, if we're looking at restoring high value habitats, the creek is really something that the community cares about. It's a sensitive feature. And so we thought about this as, a way that we can retreat out of the preserve. The preserve has been the only waterfront, even though it's not water access, but it's been the only waterfront recreation space in the city. So it's had kind of outsized pressure in terms of getting on that little sensitive property. So by acquiring the property adjacent to it, the city has really allowed for a reduction in that recreational pressure on the inner creek buffer. So as part of this project, the decision was made to try to move some of that recreational access onto the newly acquired parcels, which is consistent and keeps with the 2002 development restrictions and conditions that were placed on the preserve property in the first place. So we looked at reusing, but also reducing footprints, preserving the landmark trees that are present on the property, where it makes sense to really restrict access entirely to some of the sensitive areas and wetlands and buffers, and how that lends itself to now creating a design. So in all of those things and all of that thinking, it led us to this as the design proposal. So one of the things that I did want to call out, because it's a little bit hard to see, especially at the scale, is just the highlighted lines here. So these are the proposed fencing alignments. So we're proposing on the preserve property, you can see that we've retreated out and restored. We've eliminated access to that farther creek bank, this split rail fence. And now instead of providing at grade, compacted gravel and paved viewing areas here and here, these are now a small deck that's got a graded surface, so water and light comes through it. It's surrounded by a fence and a railing, and then that railing is contiguous for the entirety of the property and the buffer. We have closed off and replaced the railing for the overlook. That overwater structure over the creek has now been relocated and is reused over on the floodplain. So this will allow that at-grade trail that's below this deck to actually be removed and restored, so the creek can flood the floodplain and cross it without anyone actually, intruding into the buffer at all. So this area is fully excluded, and then that carries all the way down the side of the dock. And so what this does is it really says that, the community's priority of respecting and maintaining and preserving Lyon Creek as a sensitive habitat, and then also respecting the 2002 conditions to eliminate water access and recreation, basically, in the creek buffer, that we've maintained that fully, and we've done better than the existing condition in terms of respecting that that piece. So you can see this next exhibit, I think, is really helpful in terms of seeing just the difference between the existing condition, which is shown here with the sort of ochre yellow color, and then the proposed condition, which is shown with the blue. So this really illustrates what that impact minimization strategy does, and shows the transfer of, recreational access and surfaces from the preserve property onto predominantly the middle property. But saying that the place for recreation is now really central, and that allows us to, reuse these structures and then keep the new public access really well framed in terms of what would be appropriate on this site. So one item that I did want to mention is about trees. So we do have a lot of trees on this site. Some are in good condition. Unfortunately, tree management is definitely something that's a critical concern, I think, for this property. Majority of the trees that are coming out are located on the separation between the former, the current preserve, the former Morris property, and then the former Turner property. So in terms of programming these together to be a single property, we're dealing with what was really a hedgerow of hemlock trees that were planted very, very closely for the specific purpose of screening between two properties that are now really a single programmed property. This row is rooted in kind of a narrow area. We saw a photo of it before, between the buildings and the building foundations, and then the compacted trail of the preserve. So they're planted in a channel, planted as a hedgerow. They've also been topped and pruned very oddly because of the overhead power line that has come through this area. So in discussion with the city arborist and with our arborist, the determination was made that the species selection, location, and form of these is pretty poor. And then they're susceptible to failure, that it's not an appropriate location for them. So this is where, in terms of taking these out, it gives us the ability to, preserve some of these other trees. We did discuss, reusing the existing driveway here, but these are landmark trees. It's a much bigger impact in that area. So that'll be restored, and the driveway will actually then reuse, as we saw in the prior slide, reuse the paved area that exists at the preserve, but we'll also be reducing the paved area on the preserve, which is something we're all in favor of. So another note about tree management is that since this project has started, we have lost 3 trees to natural causes. They have fallen on the site. And so a critical eye at how all of the trees are doing and what would make for a better condition recreationally and habitat-wise in terms of tree management. This is really the opportunity to do that, is as part of this project, where we are mitigating for and replacing all of those trees with natives and ones that would be more appropriate on the site. Okay, so into some specifics about the designs. That was really the general design configuration. Here is the proposed site plan. So this shows it illustrated a bit. We're going to go into just a couple details about this. So the design program that came out of the community engagement, we saw some of those precedent images. It is majority passive. So on the preserve, per the, consistent with the 2002 hearing examiner's condition, remains all passive uses. On the new acquisition, it is mostly passive. There is one active recreation facility, which is the playground. Otherwise, everything is, leisure, walking, appreciation, education, interpretation, those types of paddling, swimming, all recreational, passive recreational activities. So into the buildings. So if you can recall the 2002 condition of the property, where we had 10 structures. So that included the large, I don't know if it was an estate house, but a pretty sizable house on the Morris, which is the preserve property, the 8 cabins on the Turner parcels, and then the carport, 4 or 5 bay carport on the Turner property. So total of 10 structures across the 3 properties. We're now down to 4 structures. One is a picnic pavilion, so that is an open air. It's not an enclosed structure. The community building here and the annex, the community building annex, those are both programmed as basically a flexible open space. So they each have 1 bathroom, but they're intended for building use. It won't be, open unless the building is unlocked or reserved for some purpose. And that the park use is really served by a community bathhouse, which is here. So this is a new restroom building. We'll get into what the specifics of that are. So the annex building, this is a former cabin and had a former cabin, has a little chimney, a little concrete step out front. So we're using basically the full floor plan. So it's replaced within the existing floor plan. The concrete steps will be removed. So it's slightly smaller than the existing footprint, but uses most of it. You can see that the prior plan had, kitchen, separate room, bathroom, back room, basically bedroom area. That's now been opened so that it's available for flexible community-based programming consistent with the park use to be determined by the community or by the city through its operations process. And so this is that structure here. So this is the entrance from the walking entrance, driveway entrance to get into the park where the circulation is. This is, you can see that fence and then the railing on that first little overlook in the preserve property. So that's where that consistent fencing that fences off the buffer is. And this is where the location of that cabin is in the front. Okay, so here is the bathhouse. So this previously was a cabin here, had a restroom, etc., and then had a garage expansion on it. So it's also has like a little kind of add-on room to it. Anyway, so we are reducing this was the cabin portion. This was the add-on room. This was the garage addition that came later than the earlier cabin structure. But we're basically reducing this footprint by more than half. This is going to be converted into a 4-stall family restroom. It's in this image, you can see here, you'll notice the skylights. So the intent for this and the other structures is passive lighting as much as possible. with the, the dawn to dusk operation, it should mean that natural lighting is used most of the time. But anyway, just a nice mention. And here's where that bathroom structure is. So if you're walking in the preserve, you actually, on the other side of the fence, you can see the back side of this, that if you imagine that fence gone, that's where the bathroom door will be. So this is a really central location in terms of the programming of the new park, to have this be convenient to the recreational areas in the park. Okay, so here is the community building. So the community building, the main story here is that the community building is currently a 2-story multi-room facility, with the community's desire to have every bit of this park be as accessible as possible. We looked at different ways that we could maintain the 2 stories and keep it accessible, but it just isn't possible. So the intensity of this structure, the intensity of use is going to be reduced down to just 1 floor. It'll be an open floor plan, again, for flexible programming. It does have 1 accessible bathroom, the same as the annex building. It has a small kitchen, and then it's got a storage room that'll basically hold the furniture that they can use to program the room with. So the intent is flexibility for community programming. This is a reduction from the existing floor plan. There is a laundry room on the existing structure, which will be removed. And then there is a large tree adjacent to the house that we really want to keep. And so we're actually reducing the floor plan by 1.5 feet on the north side, so that we can replace the foundation without getting further into that tree drip line than the structure already gets to. So this way the excavation will happen to the building wall. We'll use that to construct the necessary improvements, and then this tree will stay and it won't have any additional impact to its root zone. Okay. And then here's the picnic shelter. So the picnic shelter is, it's a mass timber construction. The goal was for it to be as minimal as possible to create as least site obstruction, so that that view of, if you don't live on the shoreline or you don't have a waterfront view, the park is going to provide that for visitors, which is wonderful. So sitting on a bench and really looking through, we didn't want this picnic structure to be something that was really getting in the way. So the goal was to have it be wood and vegetation and have it be minimal in its construction. It does have a sink. Otherwise it's just an open air structure. It uses the floor plan area, aside from just the chimney and the front concrete, walk of the existing cabin that's there. So slight reduction in the floor plan again. So one of the things about the design was just sustainability. There's a lot on site that we wanted to reuse. The city was very specific that there is history in these objects that have been on the site for decades at this point. So brick from the old chimneys, any of it that doesn't have arsenic in it, I think. I don't remember what the contaminant is, but we had everything tested. A couple of the chimneys, those have to be taken away, but several of them had no issues. And so those will be the bricks that are viable for reuse, are going to be reused in different ways throughout the site. This structure on Lyon Creek, reused from the prior support and foundation from the Morris House, has historical precedent in terms of its location. We have some very neat interpretive images that show this structure as a architectural milestone in mid-century design in Lake Forest Park. We're reusing that, but there'll be some changes. So the railing will be replaced. You can see this opening to the far creek bank, that's going to be closed. It'll be replaced with graded decking. That bridge that's located over the creek currently, that's the one that's going to be picked up and moved to connect to this structure. So that'll now be over the floodplain, so reducing overwater cover in that area. The shrubs, there's native shrubs, and then there's some shrubs of interesting, good health and good condition that are suitable for transplanting. So a number of those will be trying to preserve as well through the site construction. And then the park is targeting LEED for the community building sites, which is basically the non-structures version of the LEED credential. So for a park with no buildings, or for a park with minimal buildings, You wouldn't pursue a lead credential, you would pursue a sites credential, but it's through the same program. And then Salmon Safe, which is a locally originated sustainability credential that's specific to managing upland and water resources for the preservation of salmon and salmon habitat. So each of these certifications demand a better than required standard for things like energy and stormwater and water usage. So this is the way that the design team has been pursuing and what the city has stated as is their intention for how the project will be credentialed. And then the last, built element on the project really is the dock. So just a little bit about that. So the dock is located strategically on the highest point along the shoreline, and then outside of the shoreline wetlands. The intent was to move it off the preserve, but also provide the viewing opportunities at the preserve, which were provided by the single dock before with one bench at the end. What we heard from people was that they loved being out there, but it was sort of an opportunity for one. You'd kind of look, and if someone was already on the bench, you'd just wait your turn. So expanding, but reducing the impact, moving farther from the creek mouth, but still providing that much loved community activity of just viewing the water and viewing the creek. The dock length you can see here from the bathymetry. There is a portion, there's a sewer line that runs through runs in the lake. And then you can see this area of sediment change where we gain depth. And so we really needed to get the dock out to where we can gain that depth. The float structure at the end is an ADA compatible kayaking launch. And so this shape of the L is really about maintaining an ADA accessible grade on this floating structure through all of the lake levels, which we know are managed by the Corps. So this is what's proposed for that launch facility. In terms of where it could be located, remember, we can't have any water access on the preserve at all. So, accessing off the end of the dock where we might direct people, inadvertently onto the preserve, not okay. So many, many, many different criteria into this dock design. And this is what resolves and addresses each of those. And then this does show that railing that's going to be consistent all the way around, providing that separation between really the park recreational uses and then the viewing amenity and viewing area that is natural habitat that will be closed to visitor access, and that extends into the aquatic area of the preserve. And then the dock itself is going to be built to the best standards of everything we know about dock design now. So a little bit higher graded decking, very minimal profile, etc. Okay, so that concludes the design portion of the presentation. The next section is going to be turned over to Kenny for permitting.
Thank you, Ms. McClusick. Mr. Aneker, do you wish to cross-examine?
Yes, I do, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Thank you.
Want,
Pardon?
Do you want her to leave the screen share images up, or
I would ask that she leaves that up.
Okay. Go ahead then.
So thank you, Ms. McClusick. My name is Kaylin Aneker. I represent the Fudges, who are some folks that live next to the proposed park. And I had just a few questions for you. So the proposed pier is 200 feet long, correct?
It is 200 feet beyond the ordinary high water line.
Okay. And it's 10 feet wide, the pier section itself?
Doing all this numbers by recollection, I'm a little bit worried that I'm going to get something wrong. Do you mind if we look at an exhibit?
Yeah, absolutely. If you'd like to pull up, do you have something in this PowerPoint that has that information, or?
No, this was a design overview.
Okay. Well, let's see. I would prefer to leave your exhibit up for now. So I guess it is approximately 10 feet wide, give or take then. Is that a fair characterization?
I'm gonna object. She's asked this question and asked for an exhibit so that she could answer the question with more precision.
Okay. I can certainly bring up an exhibit.
I just don't want to misspeak.
I understand. Take me just a second
Are
here.
we going to have an electronic conflict if you're bringing up something and she still has hers up? I don't know how this works in Zoom.
Yeah, I think
I can
I
stop
ex-
my screen share if you want.
yeah, I
think
expect
you
that
should.
hers will be overridden by mine, so to speak.
Well, hers is down now, so you can.
Okay. And let me bring up mine. Okay, let's share this. Okay, and I will represent to you that this is exhibit 001, and it is the 70% design permit set. Does that look like what you're looking at there?
Are you asking her?
I am asking her, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see the cover sheet and plan set, but I can't see the number in the
Okay.
bottom left corner or bottom right
Okay,
corner.
that's fair.
Oh, one, great. Okay.
Okay. And you worked on this, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and down. Does this have dimensions? See if one of them is.
Yeah, that one has dimensions.
There we go. Okay. Okay, based on your review of this image, which it appears is sheet SJ103, is the pier 10 feet wide? Yes, is the pier 10 feet wide?
Yes.
And with the 5 Ls, the Ls extend 26 feet from that 10-foot spread, correct?
I'm sorry, is that written on here?
So I will direct you to the zoomed in a little bit to focus on the Ls. And so I'm asking, it looks like 2 of the Ls that are actually extend 26 feet in either direction from that 10-foot spread. Is that correct? Is that what I'm looking at?
It's a 26 feet on a diagonal. So if you measure like from a right angle to the outside corner, I don't know what that dimension would be directly perpendicular out from the 10 feet, but based on, the dock dimensions that are here, yes, there is one side that's 26 feet that extends on a diagonal out from the 10 feet.
Okay. And do you know the total overwater coverage of the pier?
Not from memory.
Okay.
No, but it is in this documentation.
Okay.
And the dock area wouldn't be the overwater coverage because of the graded decking factor. That makes sense.
Sounds good. So was there any in your project design period, was there any consideration of a smaller pier?
So yes, in the community engagement, there was a discussion about providing essentially different options for how uses could be incorporated into the shoreline. there was the option to provide separate facilities. So, for example, a separate paddling launch, a separate, not overwater structure, but separate overlook structure for viewing opportunities at the shoreline. And the code requires separation between things like paddling and swimming. So those would either become lengthwise along the shoreline, impacting more of the shoreline and reducing the distance between things like adjacent, land uses off park, or the distance between the dock and the creek mouth. And so what we determined about this configuration was that this was the one that provided the best separation between required uses, so park uses versus off park uses, the most separation from the creek mouth, while also providing for adequate separation between the launching area and the swimming area, and providing accessibility and the access to deep water. So in order to provide an accessible kayak launch that is not on the shoreline, where it's actually impacting the shoreline itself, we need to provide it at basically the terminus of the dock so that we can get to that deeper water and provide a float structure that has an accessible angle on the ramp all year round, while also providing depth sufficient that float does not sit on the bottom of the creek sediment or the lake sediment at any point during the year. So it is a pretty delicate design decision in terms of where this was located. There was also the desire by Lake Forest Park Emergency Management to, in the event of a substantial disaster where an emergency access to this area was limited to float plane, there was the desire that the end of the dock be suitable for a float plane to access in a declared emergency scenario. So this is not a float plane dock. This is in an emergency scenario, could a float plane access the end of this dock? And at this location, what you can see here on this plan, it shows that length of removable guardrail. In that really specific disaster scenario, that could be removed and the dock could access the end of this to serve emergency services for this area. So recalling what I said in the presentation, there were a number of design criteria that were weighed throughout the project. And as new information and new discussions came, both through public engagement and then engagement with stakeholders such as emergency management, this dock design did evolve to accommodate those. And although we did discuss the potential for a smaller dock facility to separate these uses, what was determined through the design process was that combining the uses into a single facility provided the least shoreline and other environmental impact, while also allowing us to meet the critical design criteria for things like accessibility, water depth, clearance from the sewer line that's there, and then the emergency management criteria.
But that was a choice that you made. It wasn't that this was the smallest dock that was possible. You made a decision to go with this dock for reasons other than seeking the minimum dock size then.
Well, so the required design criteria of providing for accessibility, clearance from the sewer, those types of things, those are requirements. And so the design response is one that meets the requirements and the needs of the project.
Was it the only possible design response that met those requirements?
Based on the process and the way that the design went, I would say yes. This is the resultant design that was the one that met those. And all of the other options that we examined throughout the process fell away and were abandoned as being not sufficient to address the requirements that the project is asking.
Okay, but that's the project is asking. That's not the smallest one that's possible. It's in order to fulfill. I'm actually going to go ahead and retract that question and move on.
I mean, I would say yes, it is the minimum that meets all those requirements.
Okay, that was not a question, but so did you consider leaving the current piers in place or upgrading those piers?
I feel like, again, I'm going to go back to the design process where we looked at the condition of the property, and there were numerous reasons why the decision was made to not maintain those piers. one of which being the deteriorating condition. One is condemned, the other is buckling. Both of the piers that are on the property currently are built for purposes that are not what the project purpose is. So one is serves 9 cabins recreational dock on a private property that was built what we anticipate to be multiple decades ago, not to the current environmental safety standards, and is condemned, so not usable. That's the one that's on the Turner property. The one that's on the former Morris property it's also not built to current standards. It has opaque decking surface. It's not built for water access. And it is buckling from the intrusion of the trees. Both of those pass through wetlands. So in terms of did we evaluate keeping those, we looked at many things through the design process and determined that the best minimum facility that was the least impactful was removing both of those old structures and creating a new consolidated structure that's shown here in these documents.
What is the requirement for pier length or let me back up. Do you know what the required pier width is for a pier to be Americans with Disabilities Act accessible?
That's a difficult question because the Americans with Disabilities Act is a set of specific design requirements to provide for multiple different conditions. And so while there are rules and requirements within that standard, it's not easy to answer your question.
Are you familiar with the Accessible Design and U.S. Access Board guidelines?
Not in the way that I can recall them from memory, but yes, I'm aware of that as a resource.
Okay. Do you know what those guidelines require for?
It's what the Accessibility Board requires?
Yes.
That's multiple chapters of information.
So when you discuss the existing conditions on Lyons Creek, you mentioned that there was some restoration that has been done on Lyons Creek? Some environmental restoration?
On the whole of Lyon Creek, or I guess, are you asking about a specific area of Lyon Creek?
Within the current existing preserve as it is.
Yes, based on the documentation, the city has taken multiple actions since they acquired the property to enhance the habitat and make restoration improvements there, as well as providing for passive public access.
Do you know if anything requires the city to make those do that restoration work?
I don't know that I can speak to that in terms of the question that you're asking.
Do you know if the city has finished the currently planned restoration efforts on the site?
I don't know that I understand your question.
The city, I will represent to you that the city, well, no, I won't represent to you because your previous testimony was that the city has done restoration work on the site. Do you know if the city has finished the currently planned restoration work on the site?
I don't understand your question because I don't know how you're defining currently planned. The city is proposing to do additional restoration along the creek as a component of this project. That is not finished. We're in the midst of that now. So my apologies. I don't know how to answer your question.
Okay. I see your confusion. I can clarify. Outside of this proposal, are you aware, the proposal being discussed today, are you aware of any currently planned restoration work at the Lyons Creek Preserve? by the city?
No, the city has hired me to work on this proposal, and so that's where my knowledge is.
I understand. You spoke a lot about community involvement. Have you ever spoken to the Fudges?
Yes, the Fudges attended multiple in-person community engagement workshops. They also, I think they both signed up, but I know at least one of them has signed up on the listserv list for email updates. They were also present at some of the direct stakeholder meetings. So residents of Beach Drive had expressed that they had some specific concerns about this project. And so we did hold some special dedicated outreach sessions to meet with those neighbors who we understood may have specific concerns, being that they would be neighborhood neighbors of this proposed project. So
And
I
what
asked
have you
them on all
done
those
to,
occasions.
I'm sorry, I did not mean to cut you off there.
Oh, I said that I've spoken to them on all of those occasions.
And have you spoken to any of the other owners on Beach Drive?
Yeah, I think the attendance at that meeting was, probably more than 15 to 20 people at the direct engagement meeting where we specifically discussed the project with the Beach Drive residents. And then lots of residents of Beach Drive also participated in other parts of the engagement process. So people were really, forthright with, I live a couple houses down or I live across the street. A few people who used to live on the Turner property or rented cabins on the Turner property, they came to the engagement process as well. So there were a lot of people in close proximity, whether Beach Drive residents or just, lots of history with the site that came to those meetings. So I did engage with a lot of people.
And what do you understand to be the concerns about the project of the people that live on Beach Drive?
Well, I can't speak for them or speak specifically to their concerns, but I think that's, a lot of that was shared through the, public comment period.
What
So
do you
concerns
within
and support both sides.
yeah. Within your understanding, though, what do you understand those concerns to be?
I'm going to object. She answered the question. She can't state what their concerns are. But if Mr. Anaker has a specific one he wants to ask her about, that would, I think, help her respond.
Well, Mr. Hearing Examiner, I'm asking what about her understanding, I would guess mental state isn't the correct term, but if she had to list what concerns of people on Beach Drive are, what she would say. I'm not asking her to tell me what is actually going on in the people on Beach Drive's minds.
If your question is as you just stated it about 10 seconds ago, I will allow it.
What is that question exactly? What is he asking? That's okay.
I will restate the question, and hopefully in a way that is more useful. My question is, as the project manager on this project who conducted a great deal of community outreach, what do you understand the principal concerns of the residents on Beach Drive to be about the project? This is about your understanding of their concerns, not asking you to testify what is actually happening in their minds.
Well, I can speak to my experience of engaging with the Beach Drive homeowners and other members of the community in terms of just the evolution of the project. So we started this project in July of 2023. You saw the summary of engagement where we had more than 8,000 unique visitors to the site. We had more than 300 participants to those in-person meetings. We had other comments and questions that came up through anecdotal discussions with representatives of the city council and project and Parks and Recreation Board, all that were relayed through the process. And we started with, one set of concerns and thoughts and input. And then as the project moved forward, we had a lot of people who would say things like, well, this is not what I thought was going to happen about the project. This sounds great. So in terms of what my understanding of their concerns were, I would say that the process, of facilitation is about providing space to hear concerns, developing a project that addresses concerns, and then using the process of facilitation to build consensus and support for what is the final design. And so, can I speak to their concerns now? No. Can I speak to what I understood their concerns to be along the process? Yes, in the sense that those concerns are represented in what is the proposed design, which was meant to be consensus building and respond to the concerns that were raised as part of the facilitation and engagement
Ms.
process.
Leklusik, I've asked you, we'll try this another way. Did they express concerns about parking?
Concerns were expressed about parking. And
Okay.
in the engagement process, you will
Did
see
they express
that
concerns
I'm gonna
about,
object.
Sure.
She's not being allowed to finish her answer.
we heard that parking should not be provided, and we heard that more parking should be provided. We heard both sides of the coin. And so again, I would point to the design as representing consensus, which of, finding the compromise point in between concerns heard from community members.
you said that you had meetings with the community meetings that included the people from Beach Drive that the Fudges were actually at. How
Mhm.
many meetings was that?
How many meetings did they attend specifically?
How many meetings did you hold? Community meetings?
We held 4. I can bring back up the engagement slide.
Actually,
If that's
yeah, if
helpful.
you would.
Well, for her to do that, Mr. Annika, you've got to get off Green Fair,
Oh, I've got to get off. I'm sorry.
I believe.
Uh, Yep.
Okay, he's off.
Okay.
Now you can go on,
Okay.
I think. I'm not sure. It is possible. I don't know that you can stack people's screen shares on top of each other. I've never seen that done. There we go. You're sharing now.
Great. So here's the summary of the engagement conducted to date. So you can see that we had, in terms of community meetings, like a community workshop, noticed as a community workshop, it was 4. And then we also had additional official meetings that are public meetings. So at least 11 additional city council meetings and Parks and Recreation board meetings that are always open to the public. We also had additional small group meetings with stakeholders and funders, and that included meetings with Beach Drive or other neighbors that raised, questions or wanted to have a conversation about the project.
And how many of those meetings how many of the Beach Drive meetings were there?
So I would have to go back and look at my notes, but I'd have to go back and look at my notes. But I know that we had at least, I believe it was 2 where it was specifically with the Beach Drive residents, and we met at City Hall. And granted, this is from recollection over a 2-year process where we did a lot of engagement. I mean, thousands of touch points of community comments, et cetera. And so I don't want to speak inaccurately. I'm not trying to misrepresent anything. We did also do a walking tour with some neighbors of Beach Drive along the length of Beach Drive. And then we had, open channels of communication that would have been outside of my involvement, which is the neighbors reaching out to members of the city, which I know happened extensively outside of my engagement that I was, I was offering.
And so you can't remember how many times you met with the folks from Beach Drive, though, in this process.
Well, in the sense that representatives of, like, neighbors on Beach Drive and representatives of Beach Drive and people who lived on Beach Drive attended and approached me at every single meeting that we had. And so I'm not quite sure how to answer your question. Residents of Beach Drive were very active in this process.
Do you recall what action items came out of your conversations with Beach Drive? residents?
No, not specifically in terms of action items. I know things, I can go back to my notes and I can look at what was discussed during those times, but an action item from a Beach Drive resident may have been us discussing something at a public meeting and them saying, wouldn't it be great if you did this? That doesn't necessarily constitute an action item. This is a park for the community, and all of the residents of Lake Forest Park had input on this process. And so whether a person was a resident of Beach Drive or not, their input is all, part of the project facilitation and engagement.
How was the walking tour advertised?
It was a direct engagement meeting. I don't believe that was advertised.
Okay. So it was
And it was
invite
an
only?
in the sense that I was invited by a neighbor of Beach Drive to walk the street.
Okay. Okay. So it wasn't an official.
No.
Okay. So you mentioned we went over the one of the concerns that was identified was parking, correct?
We heard a lot of comments about parking and access to the project throughout the project process.
Did you consider a larger parking lot at all?
As I stated before in the discussion about the dock and other elements of the project, we considered many things as part of this process.
Did you consider a larger parking lot, though?
In the sense that we looked at both larger and smaller configurations, but a larger parking lot was never seriously considered as part of this project. And ultimately, the design landed on the best scenario for providing, this park design.
Okay. Why do you believe that it was the best scenario again?
It's supported by the entire process.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that all of the work that we did to synthesize all of the community engagement, to look at the site assessment, the regulatory considerations, the requirements for the numerous requirements related to a project like this. This is the best scenario that arrives at satisfying those while representing the minimum acceptable facility and balancing the needs and aspirations of the project, such as environmental conservation.
Are you familiar with Log Boom Park?
I am.
What is Log Boom Park?
It's a park in Kenmore.
How does it compare to the proposed park?
In what way?
Size?
I don't know offhand. I do have an exhibit that we prepared for one of the community engagement meetings that looks at elements of Log Boom Park, or looks at elements of this park in relation to other parks. In Log Boom is listed on that exhibit as well. But I don't recall any specifics about numbers or figures or anything about Log Boom Park in Kenmore.
Have you ever been to Log Boom Park on a nice day?
I have.
Have you ever seen the traffic or the parking backup along the?
I'm going to object. Mr. Anaker is inserting into the question facts that have not been put into evidence.
Sustained.
Did your design consider the possibility of spillover parking onto Beach Drive?
I don't know what you mean. Did we propose to have overflow parking incorporated formally as part of Beach Drive? No.
Do you think that that's a possibility?
I don't know that I can speak to the possibility of what people will do outside of what we've provided for the park.
Well, you're a landscape architect. Aren't you qualified to speak on things like how people use outdoor spaces?
I'm going to check. She answered this question that she couldn't answer his question about spillover parking and if it was possible.
going to overrule the objection. I think this question is different enough to be able to stand on its own.
So Beach Drive is a public residential street that currently has public parking allowed along the side of Beach Drive. And I know that people use the public parking along Beach Drive. I had Beach Drive residents tell me that they use it, that their guests use it, and that as a part of this project, they did not want to see their ability to park in the public parking on Beach Drive go away. And in my discussion with this project, it was that this project is not about restricting public parking on Beach Drive. This project is about developing a park at this location. And so in terms of what would be sufficient to park this park for the proposed things happening at this park, the parking scenario that's included in the design follows the well-established precedent of 20 plus years for how the preserve has been used, and it is consistent with what would be required for a park like this, including these amenities. Now, can I speak to why the public parks on Beach Drive? I heard from community members, residents on Beach Drive, that people parked to get on the Burke Gilman and that annoyed them. That there was a dentist office that after a U-turn, action was moved, that people tended to try to drive down there to get to the dentist's office. I heard that people would drive to the end of Beach Drive and park there publicly to get on the trail to access Logboon Park. I heard a lot of things, and that's part of the confusion about answering your question to begin with.
Moving on. You mentioned that people recreate on the Lions Creek Pier. Is that correct? Currently?
It is a recreational pier in the preserve, yes.
Okay. I think, didn't you also say that it is in violation of the standing hearing examiner's order?
No, the hearing examiner's order says that it is open for public, passive recreation. And the pier is provided as a component of that project for water-based enjoyment. There's a bench, there's an overlook. People walk on the pier, they stand on the pier, they photograph. I've seen, kids running up and down there. Yeah, it is a recreational facility that's fine to use.
Okay. Let's see here. Could you take your current exhibit and go to your site design page? I believe that's just what it was titled, site design.
Which
I
site design? The site design section?
Yeah, it was the one that had the fencing highlighted.
Oh, sure. Oops. Oh, geez. Sorry. Is this the page that you're asking for?
Yes. And do you know where the wetlands are on this map? Can you describe that?
Yes. There's a wetland here, there's a wetland here, and there is a wetland here that includes the other bank of the creek, and then you can see that it connects along this shoreline and stretches out to the preserve. So this is a wetland, a single wetland of three shapes.
I'm sorry, but for the sake of anyone reviewing this record in the future, They will have access to the video, but if you could just kind of describe in terms of what is visible on this image where you are indicating, that would be helpful.
Okay, so this would be consistent with the other documentation in evidence that describes the wetland locations. I want to caveat that this is a site plan. This is not the wetland report, but I'm going to describe, just geometrically where these things occur. So following the meeting convention of Beach Drive being to the north of the project, starting on the western parcel, which is the preserve parcel, there is a wetland that is associated with Lyon Creek that is adjacent to it, has a ribbon on the west bank, and then has a wetland area that occurs in both of the floodplain depressions on the east side of the creek, adjacent to the creek and adjacent to the shoreline. There is an additional wetland that is located partially on the central parcel and then continues through to the edge of the east parcel. That is a small ribbon of wetland that is kind of supported on the bulkhead wall that is there and then stretches just along the shoreline, really narrow. And then there is a third wetland that is a larger wetland feature that occurs on the corner of the seawall adjacent to the adjacent residential property. And that wetland occurs both on the park side and then stretches like a ribbon off property along essentially the beach on the adjacent property.
So I noticed that there is no fencing along the bulkhead wetland. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Why is there no fencing there when there is fencing adjacent to the other wetlands?
So a fence would have to be supported with in-ground posts, and a fence would also be placed in a way that the fence has integrity, if that makes sense. So what you're describing would be a fence placed parallel and on essentially the ordinary high water mark susceptible to wave action and water. It would be not typical to put a fence essentially installed in the beach parallel to the water line.
So the project as is designed does not support a fence protecting that bulkhead wetland.
No fence is proposed because no modifications to that wetland are proposed.
What about the bulkhead removal?
The bulkhead removal is at the edge of the wetland, but it's not actually in the wetland. It's forming its edge.
Okay. Do you expect any swimming to happen at the shoreline?
Yes, we do expect the beach to be a swimming beach.
Do you think that it's possible that people would enter into that wetland that's not protected by a fence?
The proposal for this area at the shoreline, and with your permission, I would love to share an image because we have many of the shoreline, is that the continued use of this area will be consistent with the way that it has been used for decades, which is that it will be a soft, unimproved shoreline that provides for swimming and beach access.
But no protection for wetland beach.
No fence is proposed.
Okay. Just a couple more. Just wanted to talk through really quick with the annex building that you discussed. Are there any utilities to that building?
It'll have water, sewer, and power.
Okay. Are any of those new utilities?
That building is already served by water, sewer, and power.
How many parking spaces are included in the plan for that building?
Parking was looked at in aggregate for all of the park uses.
So there was no consideration of the how much each individual building would require then.
No, that's something that I can't speak to. And no was my response because I'm not a traffic engineer. What I can speak to is that the intent is that these are park associated flexible buildings. And so it's all part of the in aggregate calculation. But again, I'm not the traffic expert.
Okay. For the bathhouse, will there be any new utilities for that?
It is all served by water, sewer, and power, which are the utilities that the building will have afterwards as well.
Will any upgrades be required for that building?
In the sense that all of the facilities will be, new. Currently, the water, sewer, and power on the site is consistent with the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, construction of the structures that are out there and the power connections that were placed at that time. The new facilities will be modern, low flow facilities, energy saving facilities. Again, this project is looking at a better than required standard because it is seeking sustainability credentials related to LEED sites and Salmon Safe.
And for the community building, I'm assuming it's the same thing where there's no new utilities. Those will also be upgraded though?
It's served by water, sewer, and power, and the new building, the renovated building, will be served by water, sewer, and power. So there is not an intent to. I think there's knob and tube in the attic. I mean, obviously, all of that's going to be like replaced. We wouldn't use old, outdated utility service.
And finally, did you consider any other sites for a community center?
Go ahead, finish your question.
Within Lake Forest Park, do you know if there was any other sites considered for a community center besides this one?
I was hired to do this project. I can't speak to what else happened outside of the bounds of this project or the scope of this project.
Thank you. Will do it for me. No further questions for this witness.
Thank you. I've been aware that our scheduled mid-morning break has blown past about an hour ago. At this point, I think what I'm inclined to do is advance our lunch to about 12 instead of 12:30 and keep going for about another 30 minutes, give or take a little bit. I have probably a few questions I would like to ask Ms. McClusick. And I think it would make more sense to try and do them now. Uh, and well, let me just start with this. I have had a hard time looking at these exhibits. Let's end the screen sharing so we can get back to regular view here. Somebody still has screen sharing going, I think. Anyway, okay, I've got a regular screen back. I've had, frankly, a hard time finding things that I usually don't have a hard time finding. And that's wetland boundary lines, minimal buffer required lines, building setback lines, on any number of the exhibits. I found things in the critical areas report, for example, that aren't on the drawings that are in the plans in Exhibit 1, I think, or 2, whichever it is. Exhibit 1, the 70% site plan. And I realized partway through my review of this that if I go to page 1 of Exhibit 1, it lists 112 sheets in the site plan package, of which only 25 are in this exhibit. And for example, let me make this bigger so I can read it. Sheet 3 is listed as a survey. It's not in the 25. So if I want to see a survey showing the existing site without all the, and I don't mean this pejoratively, but all the busy work of the new lines and what have you, I can't see it because you folks didn't provide it to me. It's one of the 76 or so sheets in this plan set that are not included. And that bothers me. I have less than a quarter of the plans that comprise the plan set that are available to me to look at. And because of that, I look at some of these exhibits, the one you were talking to Mr. Anaker about, telling him where the wetlands were. I can't see on that exhibit a clearly defined set of 3 wetlands that match what you were saying. I just can't see them. There may be a drawing somewhere in here that has them, but it's not intuitively obvious, and that is frustrating, I will say right now. Now, you've talked about the seawall along the property line. Maybe if I saw the survey, I'd know the answer to this question, but is there a seawall along a portion of the common boundary line between the Fudge property and the Park property, the Turner property?
Yes, there is.
Okay. I've never seen that shown on any of the exhibits that are available to me. It seemed intuitively obvious to me because the shoreline in front of the Fudge property curls along and all of a sudden shoots way out into the lake. I don't know how long, 100 or more feet, and then starts meandering again towards the west. And so my assumption was that there was a seawall there somewhere. I'd love to see a plan that clearly showed me where the seawall was. If I wanted to ask about the dock, anything in the regulatory scheme about the dock, would you be the right one to ask, or should I wait until Mr. Booth has done his presentation and ask him?
I can speak to some of the design criteria of the dock.
Okay.
But I may defer questions to him if they are better answered by his expertise.
Okay. In my experience over the years with docks, Fish and Wildlife, and I've only dealt, frankly, with residential lot docks, and maybe the rules are different from Fish and Wildlife, but they were always saying that the first pile bent from the outward from the shore had to be, I think it was at least 18 feet from the shoreline. If my recollection is correct, my question is the current dock meeting that standard? Is the first pile bent at least 18 feet out from ordinary high water mark?
So we have a marine engineer who specializes in dock design that is the engineer of record for the dock design and would speak to design requirements related to that. My expertise of a landscape architect is really specific to dock use consistent with recreational, whether private or public recreation.
Okay. Fish and Wildlife have issued the hydraulic project approval, which I think all of us in the business simply refer to as an HPA, for this project. If I am reading, and that's exhibit 37. If I'm reading it correctly, the Fish and Wildlife approval allows a certain percentage of the dock and the L's to be solid and not have to have a graded surface. Am I reading their permit correctly?
I think that's a question better posed to Kenny.
Okay, I can ask him. And I'm pausing because I'm trying to get decent wording for my my next question. Uh, I have an impression, right or wrong, it's the impression I have from what I've read, that the Fudges in part believe that the city should have had more one-on-one contact with them and discussion with them, and that they feel that the city erred tremendously in not having those discussions with them, not just Beach Road people, but they seem to focus on themselves. We are the next door neighbor. It's our house that's close to the property line, et cetera, et cetera. We're the ones who will hear the noise before the people next to us do, et cetera. My impression then from your testimony is that city reps, at least to your knowledge, didn't have many, if any, one-on-one conversations just with the Fudges. Is that perception correct?
No, that perception is not correct. So
Okay.
my role as the project facilitator was to run a community engagement effort related to the project. And so as concerns came up and as interested parties said, we want to be engaged, we had small group engagement meetings with them. However, this is anecdotal, but this is what was relayed to me by city staff, is that engagement directly with the Fudges through numerous staff and representatives at the city has occurred long preceding when I was brought on board with this project. But I can't speak to the specifics of that. They can, but that is what I know from what was relayed to me. So I would say that your perception is inaccurate.
Thank you. Um, it may be that one of your exhibits covered this, but a lot of the exhibits I think must have been prepared prior to some building demolition occurring on the Turner property. Because they talk about all these buildings being there And yet, even when I looked at the aerial photo, and especially when I look at the street view aerial photo, it's obvious to me anyway, for example, that the row of cottages and the garage that were next to the Fudge property, they're gone.
Mhm.
They just look like slabs of concrete are left sitting there. So what of the Turner, how many of the Turner buildings are left now?
Um, so it would be four are the full, no, three are the full standing building. I would need to look back. All of the foundations remain from the floor and the foundation. So the floorboards, are all present. The utilities remain, piped to the floor foundations. Um, there was a selective site deconstruction that occurred. And so the material reuse that I mentioned in the presentation, most of those materials, things like the old growth wood that was harvested from the wallboards of those old cabins, the mantles, some of the ornamentation, a lot of the brick, all of that is palletized and stored in the one of the garages that still stands on the property. The deconstruction happened for several reasons. I don't know if you want me to speak to that.
I don't know either. So that being
I
that
can't.
being the case, I'll let you start.
Okay. We do have a virtual tour online on the public engagement website that shows the current condition of the property, which would help me answer the question about what exactly is remaining, if it's okay to share that.
How long is it?
It's not very long. It would just be a reference, really.
Well, everything we show, I need to make an exhibit. So
Okay, it's a website, so I'm not sure how that works as an exhibit, but
I'm not sure either. Um, City staff, do you have any feelings about websites being made an exhibit and how we do it?
We could take shots of what she's going to show in response to your questions and make them an exhibit.
Okay, I'm not trying to make a big deal out of this. I'm just trying to make sure that my perception from what I can see with Google Earth is either right or it's wrong, and I don't want to be
sure.
on the wrong side. That's all.
Mhm. Okay. So here's the community engagement website, LFP Lakefront Park, and if you go to the virtual tour tab, you can see this is as of winter 2025. This is the update of the project that shows what is remaining of many of those structures.
Now, are
So-
you screen sharing?
Oh, shoot, I am not.
No, yes, you are. You are.
Oh, I am? Okay, great. Okay, great. Yes, so can you see the images that I'm pointing to?
Yeah, okay.
Yes. So this is our virtual tour. So below these images are what the property looked like when the project started. And so you can get into the 2023 condition. So when the city got the dollars to acquire this property, there were some specifics about structures that could not be maintained as part of both the funding, but then also the structural assessments. So we heard from numerous members of the community the desire to maintain cabins and operate them as rentals, and how this could continue to be a very cool Airbnb or other type of property. As I mentioned to Mr. Anaker, a lot of things were talked about and discussed, but in terms of what this project was actually going to do and what was appropriate as a public park, we did a structure assessment. We looked at these, and many of these had been constructed a long time ago. They had some mold and moisture issues. There were a few that had, contaminated mortar in the brick, which is very consistent with construction of that time. But nowadays we don't do that. Lead paint on the outside of some of these structures. And so there was a specific abatement and mitigation part of this project was to remove the hazardous materials, take down the structures that were required to be removed from the funding specifics, and to salvage what we could. A component of this project that we heard a lot through the community engagement was that this site retains Lake Forest Park's history since before its founding, and they didn't want to lose that. And so when it was reasonable and acceptable and feasible to maintain that character that was established by this property, including the materials that were there, they wanted to keep those. And so that's why this really needed to be done as a separate thing with a specialist deconstruction and abatement company. So I think we have on.
Okay. Now,
here.
whoops. Now, can you go back to where you were?
Sure. I wanted to show this. This is some of that extensive salvage of on-site materials that
Okay.
happened as part of that deconstruction.
Let's go back to where we were.
Sure.
Okay. I would like, on my screen, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm seeing 3 photographs, a long, almost panoramic type at the
Mhm.
top and 2 smaller. I'd like that to be an exhibit.
Okay.
And can you scroll down a little more? Because you had some other pictures.
I think I can print this whole page as a PDF, if that's helpful.
Okay, that would be wonderful because these 3 pictures also. Now,
Mhm.
assuming that these are going to get into the record, let's stay where we are with this one. The lower right-hand corner.
Mhm.
I presume we're looking towards the lake, so we're looking in my terminology south. Is that right?
Yes, south
And
and
the
this.
new looking fence on the right.
Mhm.
What is that fence?
So we're standing on the far east, or sorry, the far west side of the middle property looking
Okay.
south. And
Okay.
so we're basically between the 2 docks. This is the fence that is currently a separation between the former Turner property and the preserve. So on the
Okay,
opposite side of this is the preserve.
that's
This
a fence
foundation,
along it's a fence along the east side of the preserve.
yes.
Okay. Now the bottom left picture, that's the same place, just we've panned a little bit to the left, as it were.
Right. So this
Okay.
foundation is the site on the new site plan, the proposed site plan of the picnic pavilion. So this represents
Okay.
the size and location of the picnic pavilion.
Okay. Now let's look at the top picture on this page, this
This one or
array.
further up?
That one's fine, at least for right now.
Mhm.
The house on the left, is that the main house, if you will, that is being talked about, used as the community gathering space?
Yes. So you can
Okay.
see that this is the 1970s edition with the fireplace and the old patio and the old second story. So this edition will be demolished. The fireplace will be gone. This 1970s edition will be rebuilt slightly smaller.
Okay.
There will be no second story. But yes, that is the location of where that would occur.
Okay. As I look into the background, is that a fence that I see?
This black here?
Yeah, runs all the way down to the 2 big conifers on the right side of the picture.
Yes, that is this fence, and that is a temporary fence that was put up basically during this midpoint between the mitigation, salvage, deconstruction work and the proposed park construction. So it's a
And
temporary
where
fence.
is that's the same fence you're looking at the upper
Mhm.
left right now. That fence is the same one that I'm seeing in the strip photo below it that runs all the way across.
Yeah, so you're standing in the property looking due north, due like, our project north basically for this meeting. So this fence where you're seeing it actually comes across and through the prior carport building, if that makes sense.
Brett, is that okay? Let's forget the picture at the bottom for a minute.
Sure.
Let's go to the ones on the top.
Hmm.
That's stop right there.
Hmm.
That fence that I see in the lower left, what
Yes,
direction's it running?
that is running east-west.
Okay,
On just beyond it is Beach Drive North.
okay. So
Yes.
is that the Fudge's house in the right-hand corner?
Yes, right here, right there. And
Okay,
so this wall runs alongside, it's on the Fudge's property, but it does run between the Fudge's property and the park property.
okay. So that solid, it looks like a solid board fence.
It's actually a CMU wall. It's a
Oh,
concrete masonry unit wall that runs along the full length of the property line, basically starting at the corner of the house. So the wall of their house, I think, is right at the property line. So where you see this bend in the fence, that bend is actually bent to allow, egress room outside, like adjacent to the Fudge's wall, since the wall is right on the property line, and then that concrete wall picks up adjacent to the corner of the house. So
and
that black construction fence runs east-west, parallel to Beach Drive through the whole front of the Turner property, then makes a jog and returns on the park property to provide adequate space, clearance next to the wall of the Fudge's house that's on
okay.
the property line.
And in the top, I'm going to call it a panoramic picture.
It
In
is.
the in the top pan, at the right-hand end of the temporary construction fence,
Mhm.
where you're moving your cursor right now, um, those two fences are essentially at a right angle.
Um,
The construction one going east-west, and then the Fudge's fence going north-south,
so this is the temporary construction fence that runs east-west. The temporary
right?
construction fence then turns and runs a short distance south. And
Oh,
then the Fudge's concrete wall runs south from the corner of their structure all the way down, until you can see past this large tree here, and then it ends. And then shortly after that is where the seawall picks up and runs along the shoreline.
okay. And that's on the, how tall is that fence approximately?
The black fence or the
No,
wall?
the Fudge's wall.
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't know that offhand.
Okay. Do you
I do
know how
have
tall
photographs of it, but
do you know how tall the construction fence is? Is that a 5 or 6 foot
the
chain link?
construction fence I believe, and I can double check this with our plans, but I believe that it is 8 feet along the front property line.
Ah, okay.
But I may need to check that. Uh, I feel like I should fact check that before stating it, which is,
Okay.
I suppose, too late.
Okay, we're going to enter these as about 6 pictures, I guess. And if you can get
Okay.
that whole thing, that's fine. We'll enter that as Exhibit 43.
Okay. Um, okay. Just so I remember, my PowerPoint that I presented, do I need to keep track of the exhibit numbers, or
No,
Attorney Adam Spratt, you'll do
you,
that?
you
Okay.
can if you want to, but
Sorry,
this,
I feel like I remember
You've got it.
41 and 43, but I now
if I
I
were,
don't know what 42 was.
if I were in, 42 is your PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, perfect. So 42 is mine. Okay.
I think if I were in your position, I wouldn't try to keep track of the exhibit
Perfect.
numbers.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, I think that's all I'd want to ask at this point.
Did you want to see photos of the seawall on the shoreline?
Yes.
Okay, let me grab those real quick. Should be fast. I know right where they are.
While you're looking, my guess would be that the seawall has been in place for decades.
It appears to be as far you know we can look back, but yes, in the 2022 aerial or the 2002 aerial, it's definitely there. I don't, we have aerials from like the 1936, and then there's a couple of snapshots in between there and the 2000s. But yes, I don't know when it was constructed. It appears to have been
That's,
there for a very long time.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
But yes, if you have a picture or two of it, I would love to see it so I know what we're talking about.
I do, absolutely. Um, all the days for my computer to be a little bit slow. Today is the day, unfortunately. Okay. All right, here is the Fortunately, this photo roll is taking just a moment to open. It is in this series. Okay, I'm not sure what the delay is in these openings. Would it be all right if I had them queued up for after the break?
That would work.
Okay,
I
wonderful.
would be very satisfied with that.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate your flexibility.
My computer says it's 11:50. We will break for an hour for lunch. We'll come back and we'll see if we can take a look at the pictures of the seawall, and then we can go to Ms. Pratt if she has any redirect for you. So we stand at recess for 1 hour. Thank you. This is the start of the afternoon session on February 24, 2026 in the Lake Forest Park Waterfront Park case. Let's see. Ms. McCulsick was going to find some pictures of the seawall for us.
Yes, I have those, and I will share my screen. Here. Okay, so you can see this existing conditions survey slide here. So the seawall is located basically from the end of the wall that runs along the property and ends roughly here we'll look at some photos that show the seawall that's located basically here. So this is separate from the bulkhead here that forms the abutment of the dock, and then the other bulkhead that we think extends a little farther than where you can see it over the soil level. So just to be clear, we're looking at the seawall photos here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you bet. So here we are. This is the Turner property, Lyon Creek, the preserve dock, the Turner property dock. This is our beach. This is where that wetland, B is indicated. This is the seawall here, and this is on the edge of it's on the property line, majority on the park side, and this is the adjacent single-family residential home. So you can see that this has a function of, sediment moving this way is held a bit by this wall, and then that's why the shoreline drops back. So that's what you were saying, is that, artifact in the shoreline where you can see that the shoreline is forward and then it really jumps back on the other property. Okay. So this, pardon the angle of this, I'm so sorry. But we're looking, basically standing here looking down towards the shoreline on this. Sorry about the, timbre here, but this is that wall. Here's our lawn. And so you can see that wall does not run the full length. There is an end point of it where there is a gap where there's no wall there. Oops. All right. So this is the end of that wall, where you can see sediment, and then of course wetland, the edge of wetland B is there. So this is that wall, the condition of it. It does have a mooring cleat on it, but that of course won't be used for anything. Again, that's the wall condition. So you can see the edge of the wall, kind of barely in this photo, and then you can see where it's recruited some sediment building up on the edge of it, and more of that there. So there's where that end is, that faces the wall. And then this photo, I think we're actually, some of this is where we're on the edge of the wetland that exists on this side and then carries onto the other side of the property. So those are the photos that I've got. And I know that I would have, more in the archives, but hopefully this gives you a good picture of what we are looking at.
It does. It does. Thank you very much.
You bet.
And Ms. Pratt, do you have any redirect for your witness? Oh, by the way, the pictures are entered as Exhibit 44. 44.
These pictures that she just showed you?
Yes. The virtual tour screenshots are 43. Her presentation was 42, so the photos are 44.
Okay, thank you. Since Amber doesn't have to keep track of them, but I do. Ms. McClusick, can you tell me, let me see, did you look at all of the written public comment that the city received about this project?
Yes. Well, I believe so, yes. It's possible that something was emailed at some point that I did not see, but I did review extensive written public comment. I received everything that I reviewed everything that was received and included as part of the SEPA response, as well as a lot of comments before then as part of the public engagement. So
great. One, two. Share my screen here. So this is Exhibit 1. This is page 001 of the Bates stamping. And here's the sheet index that Mr. Galt commented on earlier. Can you explain the difference between this sheet index and the 25 sheets that are actually in Exhibit 1?
Sure. So throughout the process, obviously, we pull together extensive amounts of information to support the decision making and that it satisfied design requirements. There's structural calculations, all of those types of things that is part of getting this information together. And when we submit for permit, we will curate those sheets to show information that's relevant to the specific permit submittal. So that's why there is this exhaustive sheet set of lots of information. And then ultimately what was entered as Exhibit 1 was what was submitted with the SEPA application. So it was a curated exhibit of 25 sheets of relevant information specific to the SEPA.
That's all the questions I have on redirect.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Haniker,
Yes, I have.
Cross-examination?
Yes. Yeah, just a couple of very quick questions. You testified that there was a possibility that you were emailed a comment that was not included in the SEPA comments.
No, I testified that when asked if I had received every bit of written feedback received on the project, I received every bit of written feedback that I received through the project process or from city staff. But I can't speak to whether other written comment was submitted to city staff that was never provided to me.
Thank you. And you testified that there were the 25 curated sheets, I believe you referred to them.
Mhm.
Was the existing conditions sheet included amongst those?
Included in the 25 in Exhibit 1, just to ask
Yes.
for clarification.
Yes, that is what I'm referring to.
Can we consult Exhibit 1?
Yeah, I can bring it up for you here. That. Okay. And I am just scrolling through it. You can feel free to tell me when to stop whenever you want. And I've reached the end of Exhibit 1. I'll
No.
repeat my question.
You don't have to. The existing conditions exhibit that I shared in the PowerPoint was created for the PowerPoint. I don't see an existing conditions single sheet here, but existing conditions are conveyed on a number of different sheets, starting with the first sheets showing the impact assessment.
No, wait a minute. You testify when speaking to Mr. Galt that the survey sheet was the survey sheet that he was looking at was unavailable. That survey was of existing conditions, wasn't it?
Explain that again?
When you were being questioned by Mr. Galt, there was a question about whether or not a survey that he was showing you, and I might be, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but there was a page he was showing you that was a survey that you said that he was saying was not available. And you said, no, that was not in the 25 documents, correct?
If I can jump in,
You absolutely may. Yes, thank you.
when you say showing her, I never shared my screen with anybody in this hearing, so I didn't show her any site maps at all. I believe I was asking her if the survey that's listed in the sheet index on sheet 1 of Exhibit 1, as I've got to enlarge the screen, my eyesight isn't good enough to see the teeny print. As sheet G003, I said, I didn't find that in the collection of sheets. And in fact, I looked again as we were scrolling through and I don't see it. So that's what I was referring to.
Okay, I'm sorry for any mischaracterization of what happened there that I just had, but I think the question still stands that there is not a survey included in the documents.
Let me double check, but I believe that is included in the Shoreline Conditional Use Permit application, which is Exhibit 004.
Okay, I can switch to that. I guess, okay, so let's answer this question first. Is it
I'm going to
provided?
object. She was answering the question. She wanted to look at an exhibit to see if it answered the question. I'd like her to be able to answer the question.
It's going to take a moment.
Here's the thing is that my question was whether or not it was included in Exhibit 1. She's referring to a different exhibit to see whether or not it was included in Exhibit 1. That's not where you're going to find what's included in Exhibit 1.
I'm
So-
confused because she already told Mr. Gall that page G003 is not in Exhibit 1.
And that is your testimony?
Well, I was asked to find it, and so that's what I was focused on doing. But you did ask the question one way to begin with, and then, a different way later, which was, is it correct that this is not provided as an exhibit? And that's the one that I would need to look through the exhibits to verify the answer of.
That's fair. Let's
Question
ask it
as
as
to
two
whether it's included with Exhibit 1, and then we went through all the pages and we saw that it was not included. Yes, my testimony would be that it's not included as part of Exhibit 1.
Thank you. Do you believe that it is part of another exhibit then?
I would need to look through each of these exhibits.
Okay. Would you like to, I believe Exhibit 4 was brought up. We can bring up Exhibit 4.
I'll save you the time. It's not in there.
Okay.
I know I can't testify, but while you guys were going through your thing,
Sure.
I looked at all 17 pages of Exhibit 4 and it's not there.
So
Mr. Gall, could we take a short break offline so that Amber could look and try and find a survey in the exhibits?
Sure. How long do you want, Ms. McCulsick?
So what I know is that we did
Ms.
submit.
McCulsick,
How long do you need to
your
look at the
attorney
exhibits?
wants you to have some time without us pestering you.
Uh,
How long would you like to have to look through the exhibits to try and find the survey sheet?
15 minutes or 10 minutes?
10 minutes?
So-
We're at recess for 10 minutes.
Okay.
If it were stopped. Thank you. This is the session after the short break on the afternoon of February 24, 2026 in the Lyon Creek Park project hearing. Ms. McCulsick, you were looking for something.
Yes. So we confirmed that we did submit the survey as a separate but accompanying PDF with the permit submittals that we made on behalf of the project to the local jurisdiction. It was submitted as part of the Shoreline CUP, the Shoreline variance, and the zoning CUP. We went through as many of the exhibits as we could during the 10-minute break. We did not see it as an exhibit we can keep checking. So it's possible that it just did not make it as an exhibit, and may need to be entered now. And I have it pulled up. I can share the screen, but it's a survey, so everything's pretty small from where we would be looking at it. What's the preference?
This is probably as good a time as any for me to indicate that you've submitted a set of plans. Lake Forest Park, lakefront improvements, 70% design/permit set, not for construction. And I understand what that means. It means they aren't the final plans. But I'm being asked to review and approve a zoning conditional use permit, a shoreline substantial development permit, a shoreline conditional use permit, a shoreline variance. And I may be forgetting something. All in one package. I don't think anybody's asking me to write 5 or 6 different separate decisions for them. In fact, the conditions the staff has recommended are all merged together into one set of conditions. And I'm not objecting to that. That's what I would expect. But if I'm going to do all of those different permits in one decision, I'd like to have one plan set that covers everything I'm being asked to approve. I can't see any reason why I should have to cite to half a dozen different documents in the file to find plan sheets that relate to a part of the project. So while you were looking for the site survey, which is listed as sheet number 3 in the plan set that we have, and which I think we all agree now it's not there. Not that it doesn't exist, but it hasn't been put in the set of sheets that have been made available to me and online. I'm prepared to read off the sheet numbers that I believe I need to see in order to finish this hearing. Not today's hearing, but to finish the hearing here. And so if somebody's ready to copy numbers, I'm ready to read them.
Would this be, Mr. Galt, I'm going to have an objection to the entry of these as exhibits today. Would now be the time to do that, or would you like me to hold off for a second?
Why don't you go ahead?
So, well, I realize that there is a degree to which we can, I think photographs there's some new photographs, PowerPoint, that's not completely beyond the pale. However, the introduction of a full new set of plans, including, I might add, the existing site conditions, something that my experts have cited in their report as being something that would have been very helpful in their evaluation of whether or not this project will achieve the goals of no net loss and other things that are frankly required in order for you to grant the permits today, as well as relevance to the SEPA concern, which that does have a very explicit pre-filing requirement. I believe that definitely per the rules and per your order as well, I believe the applicant, which is in this case the city, was required to submit everything that would have been relevant to that consideration under, I believe, Rule of Procedure 22 or 224D, I believe, and to allow the introduction of wholesale of that entire set of plans at this point would simply deprive, it would quite simply deprive my clients of a degree of due process here, because they have been unable to evaluate those plans. They're not part of the hearing record. And in consequence, they're also not able to have their experts evaluate those plans that their experts frankly needed in order to make a full evaluation of what the city's trying to do here. I feel like the city is effectively hidden the ball from us, and you yourself have expressed some, hesitance at the idea that you can approve these permits with without these plans. And so I would object to the entry to the record. I think that you should remand this to the city on that basis alone, or at the very least, continue this hearing for a reasonable amount of time. I would say at least, probably at least 2 weeks, probably more like a month, in order for the respondents, or not the respondents, the appellants, and the other members of the community to have a reasonable opportunity to actually evaluate these plans that the city has decided weren't relevant up till this point, but clearly are. And that would be what we would ask.
Thank you. Ms. Pratt?
Yes. First, I don't know how many sheets, Mr. Galt, you are asking to be included in the record now. I did not hear you say you wanted all 112 or how many there are. So Mr. Anaker is speaking out of turn there. Second, we have had one witness in this hearing. We have not gotten to any of the SEPA hearing yet. The city, Ms. McCusick has already testified that some of the exhibits that are in Exhibit 1 and elsewhere show multiple things. Is this a complicated site? Yes. Maybe we need to point some of these things out with other witnesses. We do have more than one. Yes. So to say that we have been hiding the ball is an egregious misstatement. If the hearing examiner would like some more pages from these sheets because you'd like to review them to see if they include relevant information, we are happy to do that. But please, no one should say that we have been hiding the ball and intentionally not including sheets of these plans. We believe we included the relevant documents that you need to make the decisions on this case with the witnesses that we have planned to testify, of which one has not even finished. So asking for a month's continuous is ridiculous.
Thank you. Let me count something for a minute. Hang on. I believe that when I'm asked to consider approving a series of applications all at one time, all in one package, and if I follow the staff's recommendation, all by one decision, not multiple decisions. And where if I remember correctly, well, I was going to say, I think the staff has only cited one document as being the recommended condition 11, development shall substantially comply with the 70% design permit site plan sheets L111 to L113. So staff apparently thinks there are only 3 pages in all of this that form the plans that would be appropriate for a shoreline substantial development, conditional use permit, variance, and conditional use permit. I respectfully disagree. I think a lot more plans are needed to provide the information that the state requires in shoreline permits. And in terms of the conditional use permit, that I have historically, over the last 48 years, found to be necessary to properly have a baseline for ensuring that a project is in fact conditional use permit is in fact compatible with its surroundings. I'm expecting to approve a set of plans for the projects if I am able to approve the projects. And when I see a document listed as 70% design / permit set, and I'm not given all of them to look at, I'm troubled. I know that there are a couple of sheets of like building elevations for a couple of the buildings that are in some of the other documents further down the pile. They're not in this one, but they're tucked into other reports. I find that an unsettling way to have to deal with this. The numbers that I wrote down that I would like to see, there's about 50. Maybe 50, maybe 48, maybe 52, but there's about 50, which is about half of the sheets that are listed. The numbers that I wrote down are all the sheets that I want. I didn't take the time to try and figure out whether they were in the document as presented or not. So these will just be numbers of the sheets by their page number. I am not interested in trying to find a way to delay a project to the point where it dies. I am not interested in trying to find a way to delay a project so that it becomes infeasible somehow or other. But at the same time, I want my decision to be able to withstand a court challenge if one were ever to come. I've always sort of looked at my decisions that way, that I have multiple audiences. I have the people who attended, I have the applicant, I have the city staff, and I have the court system. Not all of them get involved in every decision, thank goodness. But I think I have to prepare the decision so that it would stand a judicial challenge if one were to come. I feel that the 50 or so pages that I'm going to read you the numbers on in just a minute need to be available as part of Exhibit 1. If there are more in there than I've listed here, don't take out the ones that I didn't write down. Just add the ones that I have noted that aren't in Exhibit 1. I want Exhibit 1 augmented, not subtracted, and then some things added back in. I think it is unfortunately reasonable to delay the proceedings some. I wish I'd had the time to figure out how many of these 50 are already in the stack in Exhibit 1. When I started making the list, it was about halfway through the little recess, and I just plain didn't have time after I wrote my numbers back to go then pay, screen by screen and see which ones I already have. Because I know there's a bunch that are not in there. But there's probably a lot of them that are in there. So I don't think a month's time is at all necessary to enable a review. I'm not even going to inquire as to whether the full set of the 70% design plans have been available at the city's front desk for people to just come in and look at. That in the old days, that used to be how people looked at applications to find out what was going on, which you came into the city and said, I'd like to see the file on thus and so. And nowadays, I think because of the Public Records Act and probably a bunch of other things, I don't think most cities work that way anymore. If you want something that hasn't been put on the web page, you file a PRA and go through the exercise. So I'm not even going to inquire whether these things have been available there. I will read the page numbers that I believe at a minimum need to be in the 70% design permit set that's this exhibit, which I presume is what you really want me to approve. And having done that, then we will decide the scheduling question. So, sheet numbers, and these are the sheet numbers that are listed in the sheet index on page 1 of the plan set. So it's under sheet index, there is a sheet number and then a plan number and a sheet title. The numbers I'm going to read are the sheet number from that first column. There's 2 columns. The first one has about 50 items. Well, has more than that. Probably got about 60 things in it. And the second one has the remainder. And I'm reading from the sheet number in that listing. 1, 2, 3. Well, let's see, 1 through 6. Let me try and simplify this. 1 through 6. 11 through 23, 25, 30, 33, 39 through 41, 54, 56, 59, 64, 68, 69, 73, 76 through 80, 85, 86, and 100 through 112.
Could you read those once more, sir?
Sure. 1 through 6, 11 through 23, 25, 30, 33, 39 through 41, 54, 56, 59, 64, 68, 69, 73, 76 through 80, 85, 86, 100 through 112.
Thank you.
I wish there were a way that we could continue taking some testimony and not lose all the time that we've all reserved on reserved on our calendars. But I would welcome council's thought on that.
I am sure we would just end up with the same objections with the very next person the city put on to testify. So that doesn't really seem like it would get us much movement in the hearing.
Wanted to at least ask.
Yeah, unfortunately, I know one of the sheets is something that my experts wanted to look at, so that I would like to see that. Yeah.
Let me ask this, and I don't know, maybe I shouldn't ask, but I'm going to. Is the city under any grant funding deadlines that if you don't start the project by a certain point, certain millions of dollars that you've been granted is just going to evaporate into thin air?
I would need to consult with my clients in order to be able to ask that. So if I get, a series of questions and I can take 15 minutes, I would then be able to answer that.
Ah, okay. Because I would be, personally, I think a week or two is fine. I can't imagine this taking more than that. Unless somebody's expert was out of the country and out of contact for the next 2 weeks or something.
I am reaching out right now to clients and experts just to get availability for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. I want to make this delay as short as I possibly can, and yet provide enough review time that a challenge of inadequate time to review would pretty much fall flat on its face just for being asked. So that's sort of the fence I'm trying to straddle, is as short as possible and long enough that I'm not going to be accused of having deprived you of due process rights. I will say that my schedule going on into March and definitely into April is very open. I've got a few things scattered hither, thither, and yon, but if we said 2 weeks, that week, the week March 10th, on to the end of the week, I have nothing scheduled. So I can do the same thing we're doing this week, is just devote the whole week to it.
I think preliminarily, I've got some depositions, but those I have that week open. I personally do. I believe the clients are also available the week of March 9 through March 13.
Yeah. I tend to stay off Mondays because that's the
right,
day
yeah.
I'm the grandkids and school and band and what have you. I can do Mondays if I have to, but I prefer to do shorter hearings on Mondays that I can fit in between my duties for them. So the week of the 10th would be wide open. The only question, I guess the only question I can think of, Ms. Pratt, that would potentially have some effect on my schedule would be the one that I asked. Are there any grant funds that are going to go poof? I mean, I've heard school district conditional use permits where, God bless their pea-picking hearts, they've waited until about 2.5 weeks before their grant funds die to apply for a hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'd like to ask my clients that question, as well as what's everyone's availability the week of March 10th. Tuesday, the 10th through the 13th.
Yeah. Do you want, what, a half an hour?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Is that going to be enough time for you to contact anybody you might want to, Mr. Anaker?
Hopefully. I'm going to try my experts. I know one is in a meeting, one is out of the office right now, and one is in a meeting, but the boss is the one that is in the office, and so hopefully I can get her in the next bit.
Yeah, and hopefully she will know her associate's schedule to some extent. Okay. We'll do another recess. I've got 1:44 on my computer clock. Let's make it 2:15. We're at
Sounds
recess
good.
for a half an hour, reconvening at 2:15.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the, well, 2:15 session on February 24, the Lakefront Park improvements hearing. While you folks were doing your thing, I went through my list and figured out that probably about half of them are already in Exhibit 1. The ones that are not are 3, 4, 5, 6, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 20, 21, 22, 23, 25, 30, 39, 40, 41, 54, 56, 59, 64, 68, 69, 73, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 85, 86. The others are already there. How does the week of March 10th look for folks?
Well, Mr. Gull, what I found out during the break is that the cover sheet or the sheet index that these numbers came from, this is a template for the sheet index. So not all of these 112 sheets are produced at 70% design set. So what we need to do, I mean, you've done part of the work for us that we were going to do, but of these 25, we need to see, well, which of these do we have? And if we don't have them, it's because they would be produced at another stage in the project, and we could tell you what that stage was. I mean, you're just going off the sheet title, which is all that was given to you. But
Yeah.
so it's kind of a wish list. And I understand why, but some of these wouldn't be produced with were not produced with the 70% design. I don't know yet. We have not had the opportunity to check and see which of those we are not done yet, or I can give you all 25. So I'd like to come back tomorrow morning at 9 and have that information.
Oh, good grief. Nothing's ever easy. Okay, sure. I mean, we've all got tomorrow reserved, so we shouldn't have any reason not to be able to get together at 9 and figure this out.
And on the grant front, I can tell you that the city has a $1,040,000 grant that needs to go out for bid summer of 2026.
We'll have an answer, at least for my end, long before then.
Yeah, and you understand you are not the only answer needed.
I'm not.
You know, several of these permits go to ecology, sir. You know
This
that.
is true.
You know that.
Yeah. I do. Compliments of the state legislature.
There you go.
Okay, I'm game to come back tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock.
Do we plan on discussing timing and availability then probably
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you have, we can't possibly do it that week information right now, it would be worth sharing it with us.
I have one expert that is not available that week. However, I would just ask, because I know even right now we have a city witness that wouldn't be available to testify until next week. I just ask that we extend that same courtesy to my expert and have her testify on the Tuesday, or plan to have her testify on the Tuesday, even if that's out of order.
What city witness isn't available to testify this week?
Oh, no, I just know there was a witness. I was just using the example. I believe there's a witness that isn't available to testify until the 3rd. I may have not. Okay.
No.
Well, just
No.
forget I said that. All I'd ask
Yeah.
is that I have one witness, one expert that will not be available until the 17th. Everyone else should be available in that time frame. And so I would just ask that we allow that witness to potentially testify a little out of order.
We can address that tomorrow,
Okay.
reserving the 17th. St. Patty's Day.
Indeed, yes.
Okay, so we're going to get together again tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Same channel, same login information, I'm assuming. And we will get our schedule set for where we go. That'll be it tomorrow. Okay. All right. Sorry to be the cause of this, but I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry, because I think the information's appropriately should be part of the record. So anyway, our appeal is then recessed for today, reconvening tomorrow morning at 0900 via Zoom/hybrid. Location of the hybrid is up to the city. They were able to have city council chambers today. They didn't think they were going to be able to. They may be able to tomorrow. They won't, but they can post. City Hall isn't that big, so they can post that for people who want to appear hybridly. Since this is a continuation to a date and time certain, there is no requirement for further legal notice and none will be given. So I will see you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner.
Thank you, folks.